Meeting for Monday, June 20th. Only one study session topic for tonight. We have the directors here presenting on the budget tonight. And directors, I believe you have your marching orders. We're going to keep it very tight tonight to try to finish up by 7 p.m. to start the regular meeting. But I'll kick it off first with Director of Finance, Jackie Lowe, to get us started. Good evening, Director Lowe.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Oh, right here. Okay. The staff is going to review the preliminary 2023 operating and the prioritized capital request with you tonight. This is tonight's agenda. We're going to recap the 2022 April year-to-date revenue expenditure, also review the 2022 amended budget, which includes budget supplemental number 1 and number 2, and review 2023 budget assumptions to see if there are any changes since our presentation from April 11th. And the department is going to review the preliminary operating budget. Tonight, Public Works, Police, Utilities, and South Platte Renew are going to present their preliminary operating budgets. Last, we are going to review the capital improvement plan, the project matrix recommended by different boards, commissions, and committees. This is just a reminder for a 2023 City Council budget calendar. We're going to present the 2023 operating budget in 2 sessions, tonight and next week. The Budget Advisory is going to present their annual report to Council on August 1st. And we are going to finalize 2023 operating and capital budgets on August the 8th in 1 session. Let's take a look at the 2022 April year-to-date revenue expenditure trends. This is a reminder what a fiscal health wellness consists of. Definitely we need to spend within our means. We want to establish and maintain reserves. I want to give Council a heads up. We're going to review the reserve policy on August 1st, including a recommended use on assigned fund balance. And also we want to understand our variances. The finance team has been reviewing the variance analysis with every department on a quarterly basis to review and monitor the spending and revenue pattern. We want to be transparent about the true cost of doing business. Also want to consider the economic analysis and long-term planning into decision making. Tonight, you'll notice we have been using the financial data from the Colorado Legislative Council and the information from GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, to incorporate their analysis into our projection. Also, we listen to our investment advisor to see if we're really running into a recession, a contraction, or slowdown of the economy. And we also, when we review the 2023 budgets with Council, we're also considering the 2024 budgets internally, because it's very hard for any municipality or organization to absorb the shock of COVID in 1 year. We need to take a few years to absorb the price increase, then we can normalize our operation in future. You may recall we reviewed this Colorado economic indicators with Council in April. The last line item to show the estimated inflation in the Denver, Aurora, Lakewood area. For 2022, the estimated CPI inflation 7%, then 3.8%, 2.4%. We're going to receive a new CPI from the Colorado Legislature Council in June, probably by the end of this month. And this is the 2021-2022 monthly and year-to-date revenue expenditures. You can see the bar charts representing the monthly revenue expenditures. The line chart, the line represents the year-to-date. You can see the increase compared to the same time last year. Some of the revenue comes from sales use tax. When we encounter inflation, we pay more for commodities and goods and services. We also receive more from sales taxes. And this slide includes one-time revenue, such as 1.2 million plan review fee and the sale of the Fire Training Academy. This is month-to-date, year-to-date expenditures. We receive the majority of sales tax return on a monthly basis. We also have filers file with the city on a quarterly and annual basis. You can see for March why there's such huge in expenditures, because in March, a lot of departments pay into the Risk Management Fund, Employee Benefits Fund, so we record one-time charge in March. Based on the year-to-date financial report we share with Council, this is an estimated general fund balance composition. You can see at the end of 2022, April, we're projecting we'll have 1.1 million net change in fund balance, which is operating surplus. Then the estimated unassigned fund balance after Tabor, labor, ARPA funding, and the reserve policy at a 16.7%. The estimated unassigned fund balance at the end of April was 6.4 million. Let's take a look at the 2022 amended budget, including budget supplemental 1 and 2. The amended revenue has three major parts: sales use tax, property tax, and all other revenue. We didn't include 1.2 million, the plan review fee to general fund, because community development received a huge request from plan review. So the all other revenue, the 17.8 million, include one-time amended budgeted revenue. Property tax estimated at the same, but sales use tax, please see our note. This 37 million is an estimate, which is 8% more than 2021 actual based on audited financials, and 9.5% more than 2022 original adopted budget. But this 37 million, we did not submit a budget supplemental to council for revenue, but just want to show you the current estimated revenue for 2022. We established a baseline for TIF because we received such an increase in sales tax. So initially we thought we were going to hit the baseline for DDA in November. Now we're estimating we probably can hit the baseline in September. Based on the current analysis, the city will probably be transferring to DDA $115,000 sales tax. This is the budgeted expenditures. Based on departments, you can see the majority of the spendings for police, fire emergency management, public works, parks and rec, library service. We have other expenditure. That 10.2% include 2.9 million COP payoff, which was done on June 1st. You can see the percentage allocation based on amended budget. This is another way to see our expenditures. We try to break down our costs by variables and fixed. Variable means it's discretionary. We'd rather just spend $20,000 if we can get a $200,000 revenue. We definitely want to do that. But a lot of fixed costs are based on contracts like labor, bargaining group, and software. Some are fixed. So I just want to give you a very high-level cost breakdown. So I would say 40% of our expenditures are variable, 60% probably fixed. So this is just an example of fixed costs like debt service, the Denver fire contract, telephone contract. Our software costs, we have two types. If it's a maintenance for recurring services, that's fixed. But if it's a new software we're trying to implement, they are part of a professional service fees category. They are negotiable. You can see labor bargaining units. This is a variable cost, mainly our professional service fees, design engineering professional services, consulting, legal, and like I said, computer application for new implementation. This is another way to see our compensation. Of the total 36 million, probably 67% goes to wages, salaries, 24% for benefits, such as city's employer taxes, PTOs, and retirement. And for 2022, the finance department took a liberty to evaluate the vacant positions, because most departments assume to hire all the staff on January 1st, but in fact, we have some vacant positions, so we estimate the vacant savings for 2022 are probably 273,000. But please note, this is a budgeted numbers, not actual numbers. Let's talk about our 2023 budget assumption based on the 2022 actuals. This is just to remind council our strategic plan based on the vision outcome. We added a community well-being and combined infrastructure and transportation. This is our revenue expenditures in the past 10 years. The blue line shows the revenue, the red line shows expenditures. You can see the surplus or deficit through the 10 years. Remember, we encountered the financial crisis recession in 2008. It took city 4 years to respond to the loss. So you can see our expenditure revenue after 2008, around 2011 to 2012. And the last 5 years, from 2016 to 2021, our surplus is widening. So the compound annual growth rate right after recession for the revenue is around 2.8 million, expenditures 1.6. But after recession, in the past 5 years, you can see our revenue growth probably 4.9%, expenditure 4.5%. But the average, if you see the top, the 10 years, revenue is probably 3.8%, expenditures 3%. So we want to look at our revenue expenditure right after recession and in the past 5 years. I want to go over our 2022 forecast before we take a look at the 2023 budget assumption. So when we review with council on April 11th, the estimated year-end fund balance from last year's 16.8 million, we adjusted the revenue, expenditure, assuming we are going to have ending fund balance 14.2 million. However, after reevaluate our sales taxes, which is 8% higher than 2021 and 9.5% higher than the original budget, we adjusted our revenue. You can see, and including 1.2 million plan review fee, increased by almost 3 million. However, we pay off the COP of 2.9 million. We have a net transfer out as included in budget supplemental 1 and 2. We estimate to end this year with 17.1 million. So, like I said, for 2022, the estimated TIF to DDA is approximately 115,000. So with the 2022 forecast in mind, let's go back to see the assumption for 2023. 2023 is hard to estimate when the recession, contraction, or the economy will slow down. So we use 4% for sales use tax revenue. Traditionally, we have been using 3%. Other revenue sources, 2%, expenditure, 4%. For 2023, based on the 4% sales tax revenue, we estimate the sales tax TIF transfer to DEA is approximately 175,000. So if we increase the sales use tax revenue assumption, we definitely will transfer more TIF to DDA. So this is based on the 2022 forecast and some assumptions for 2023 projected budgets. And we review these factors with council. Some external factors and internal factors will affect our 2023 budgets and beyond. First is we are reacting or responding or rebounding back to COVID. I just want to, you probably all know Fed increased the interest rate by 75 basis points last week, which 0.75%. We are expecting additional 75 basis points in July, another 50 basis points in September. So you can see this Fed is trying to tighten their monetary policy. We just do not know how this will affect our economy. Is that fast enough to really control CIP? The next thing is with all the stimulus money, we have too much available cash chasing very few goods and services. It's not only in the municipality sector, in the private sector as well. So we are competing with private sector. And supply chain disruption, we all know if we place order now, we may need to wait until probably 6 months to get the goods or equipment. And another is labor increase with people. I would not only resign from current position, but also travel to other places. So we'll see the supply and demand, how that will affect or determine the price. Last one, geopolitical events in Ukraine. Just learned Russia probably control 15% of fertilizer in the whole world. So you think about the food for energy, but fertilizer is what you need to grow produce. So you can see how these factors affect the food price and energy price. Internal cost factors.
Director Lowe, I apologize for delaying, but we're 8 minutes over right now.
Okay.
Time, so we may want to just direct council to the slides and.
Okay. So just want to go over what we're doing with 2023 budget presentation preparation. First, we want to, we still continue enhancement service concept, align the strategic plan by using 2020 amended budget as a baseline without one-time request. And also we have an internal budget review committee to evaluate the operating budgets. And we also will follow the practice we did last year to include a one-time negative line item to adjust vacant positions and expenditures based on past 5 years budget variances. Last one, we had a concept of create a contingency fund to address the uncertainty. And this year we're going to expand because we don't want the departments to put a lot of padding in their budget. We'd rather to address uncertainty and trade-off. I think budgets with this economy we are in, it's very difficult to budget uncertainty. And also with different priorities, we have different trade-off. So we are going to expand a contingency fund. We'll itemize each line item to show transparency. Here's the enhancement definition. And tonight, Police Department will be the first to present to Council their preliminary budget request, and we have Public Works, Utilities, and South Platte Renew. So if you don't have any questions, I'll have Vance the Dip from Police Department to present the budget on behalf of police.
Hello, Deputy Chief. Hi. Good evening. And Council, just so you know, we asked each of the departments to keep their presentation and questions to 15 minutes. So go ahead, Deputy Chief.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. I'm here in person, obviously, and Chief Watson is here virtually. So he is, there he is. So he's here to answer any questions as well. So the Police Department mission statement is to promote and ensure a high quality of life, economic vitality, and a uniquely desirable community identity. I am going to skip through some of the slides and overview some of those. You've had those, and you can review those, and as well as the community. This is our most recent organizational structure. We've got about 121 full-time employees at the Police Department, which includes code enforcement, the Fire Marshal's office. Our strategic plan connection touches every facet of the strategic plan, but obviously safety and the perception of safety is critical to the overall well-being of our community. So that is our primary connection. I'm going to go over the 14 budget enhancement requests. and I'll go over some of them in a little bit more detail. We're looking at one civilian support officer, which is also known as a police desk officer. We changed that to more accurately reflect their job duties. 6 sworn police officer positions, the equipment and cars for those additional positions, 1 dispatch supervisor, a truck for our seasonal code enforcement officers, an increase to several line items, which I'll go into detail about. We've got an enhancement for operating equipment, which I'll go into, adding some money back into our firearms program supply line item, as well as the 2 post-academy tuition costs. Those positions were approved by council previously, but we did not request the tuition at that time. Also, we're looking for some additional funding for our mental health services that we supply to our officers. Adding some money to our victim assistance fund. Also talking about adding 10% to our professional services line item due to price and inflationary costs. There's an increase in the Denver fire contract and an increase in utility costs. So I'll go over those now. Enhancement number 1 is our civilian support officers. Council's previously approved a supplement to hire 1 civilian support officer, which was previously known as a PDO. So that's our enhancement number 1. And we've talked a lot about why we're looking for that enhancement to increase our sworn officer visibility and proactive policing efforts. Enhancement number 2 is the additional 6 sworn police officers. We've spoken a lot about that at other previous study sessions. That would increase our officer visibility, proactive policing efforts, and would actually allow for an additional patrol officer on the street each shift. Enhancement number 3 is the equipment for those added officers. The clothing, uniforms, ballistic equipment, 2 cars, because that obviously increases our patrol car fleet, and would also allow for more officers on the street at one time. Enhancement number 4 is a dispatch supervisor. We do have perpetual staff shortages in our dispatch center, and some increased supervision requirements for our 911 communications center. What we would do is promote from within and then backfill that with 1 dispatcher position. Enhancement number 5 is the truck for the 2 seasonal code enforcement officers. Right now we have 1 seasonal officer that's working, and we're using a holdover, what's called a holdover, old code enforcement truck for that seasonal officer to drive. If we do add this truck to the fleet, then those 2 code officers would share a car because they're both part-time. Enhancement number 6 is an increase to several line items. It's a 10% increase to office supplies, operating supplies, clothing purchases, and food. That's an increase for inflation and cost increases to that line item, to those line items. Enhancement number 7 are regularly replaced equipment needs. We have identified much of our equipment that has to be replaced when it reaches end of life, and so we have a replacement schedule for those items. This year we have about $17,000 worth of those items that need to be replaced, to include rifle sights, tasers, and duty ammunition. Enhancement number 8 is to add some funds back into a line item. We took $20,000 out of our firearms program supply line item last year, and we actually prepaid about $20,000 worth of supplies out of salary savings from last year's budget for this year. So we would like to add that $20,000 back in because we'll need those additional supplies in 2023. Number 9 is the tuition cost for those 2 post-academy positions that we've approved that we have going. Those academy positions were approved by council, but the tuition at that point was not included, so we're asking for $22,000 for that. Enhancement 10 is to add $26,000 to our professional services line item. We do provide anonymous mental health counseling to the employees at the police department. In 2021, we spent about $24,000 on this program, and we've just been using money in the budget that has been surplus each year to pay for that. We'd also like to add about $4,300 to our victim assistance line item fund. Right now, it only has a line item of $700. We'd like to increase that to $5,000. Our victim assistance fund is used to pay for things like changing locks, cell phones, anything that a victim might need, a victim of a crime might need, and according to our victim assistance coordinator, she spends between $3,000 and $5,000 a year on those items. Enhancement number 12 is a 10% increase overall to our professional services line item to account for cost, ongoing costs and inflation. This does not reflect the Denver Fire contract, which is here. Enhancement 13, by the Denver Fire contract, there's about a $33,000 increase to that contract for 2023, bringing that to a $6.6 million. And last is the Enhancement 14, which is an increase in utility costs. We were told by finance to increase those 4 line items by about 5%. We do believe we will have about a $25,000 revenue increase in the fire marshal's plan review fees this year due to sheer volume of plans that are coming in. And for future year considerations, we're really looking at more alternative policing programs, but at this point we don't know what that would do to the capital or anything of that nature, but we don't have anything on the horizon. And that is our presentation.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chief. Mayor Pro Tem.
Just a question on the mental health services portion of this request. Do we have usage statistics for that?
So it's all done anonymously. So we do have basic statistics on visits, number of visits, and things of that nature. But we did spend $24,000 in 2021 over 4 different providers.
Okay, so we get charged based on usage for that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and just a little bit of the program. I've had contact with employee assistance programs in the past. Is this similar to that, or is this a separate where you call and they say, oh, you get 10 visits for free or whatever? Are we just open-ended for our officers?
It's we try to get it at 6 visits per officer per event if we can do that.
Okay.
If there's an ongoing need, then the provider can actually contact Chief Watson without giving any identifying information and asking for more visits if that's needed.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Member Russell.
Thank you. So are we still 4 police officers short? Do we have 78 sworn
We
officers?
do not have 78 officers on the street at this time. I think our current number, four might sound right. We're in the midst of obviously hiring. We have another hiring coming up on Thursday and Friday of this week. 4 sounds about right, council member. It's not much more than, is it 4? Yeah.
And then the 2 post positions, have we found people to fill those yet?
Yes, ma'am. We have our first one just graduated in December, and he is now in field training, just started field training. And we have another officer that has been identified, future officer has been identified, that will start the academy in August. And right now she's actually working as our seasonal code enforcement officer.
Great. All right. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Member Nunnenkamp.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, for being here this evening. I have a couple of questions. One is, you mentioned the civilian support officer. We approved one of those, and I believe that they're starting right around now.
Yeah, should be any time, I would hope. They're in the hiring phases now.
Fantastic. And when you presented to us previously, and I think what led us to support or to provide that position was the idea that that's a force multiplier, that having someone kind of on the desk will free up our officers on the street. Can you help us quantify how much capacity a position like that frees up with the one that we've approved, and then what the additional request here would?
And what we're doing actually is we're making that program more robust right now too. We're doing some additional training with the one that we currently have, the one that we're going to hire, and then the one that we're proposing. We're doing a bunch of additional training to get them to take more types of reports over the phone or in the lobby. So us, like a civilian support officer, would be able to take roughly 14 to 18 reports a day, depending on the complexity of the reports, either by phone or in the lobby. And that is without them having to do all of the additional documentation our officers are required to do by state legislature, to include the body cam footage, tagging body cam footage. It's called a civilian contact card that has to be filled out for the contacts. all of those additional things that our sworn police officers have to do, these civilian support officers don't have to do. So it definitely frees them up to take more reports, which would allow the police officers, the sworn officers, to do more in-person contact on the street, proactive patrol at hotspot and identified locations, spend more quality time with victims of violent crimes, things of that nature. And so that's the big force multiplier, is if those officers don't have to take what we consider cold reports, reports that are not in progress, then that would free up the sworn officers to do more of that work.
That's helpful, because I know there's the one and then the additional here, plus the 6 sworn. I'm trying to understand how much capacity is needed versus how much would be provided. And to jump off of Member Russell's point about the 6 sworn officers, and I know we are at a deficit right now.
We are.
I'm curious what strategy maybe it would be employed to ensure that we could hire if we were to approve these 6 positions. I'm sympathetic to know how challenging it
Yes.
is. It's been challenging since I've been following this. And so if this were to be approved, explain to me why we wouldn't have 10 openings, you know?
Sure. Our professional our professional standards bureau is responsible for all the training and hiring of officers and recruiting, and they are working their tails off. We have done more proactive efforts to get out into the community with these post positions that were approved, with the positions that we've got right now. We're hiring lateral officers that have experience. We're hiring officers that just got out of the post academy. We're an ongoing hiring process. I think right now we might have, we just released 2, maybe with a 3rd officer going out on their own just within the last 2 weeks. It's a constant hiring process. So they're really getting the word out there, and communications is doing a ton of work with us, and our new community relations, crime prevention tech, Crystal Essman, is really getting our name out there, and we're seeing a lot of positive movement from that as well.
Thank you so much.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Just a general question on the request for enhancement on the Denver Fire contract. In thinking back in past budget cycles, I know that at some point we had the Denver Fire contract housed under the city manager's office as opposed to the police department. Does anybody recall when we moved that to the police department?
That
And made that
was
an expense?
this year or last year? It was last year. Okay.
Okay, so that'll be ongoing for the police department then?
Yes,
or
we've
police-
encompassed the Denver Fire contract and the emergency management contract with Arapahoe County into one division.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Member Russell?
Thank. Does the $27 million budget for the police department, does that include the 6.6 million for the fire contract, or is that separate?
No, overall, that entire number is included in all divisions. So the Denver Fire contract is included in our overall budget number.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions from council? City Manager?
Just one correction, that was transferred in 2020.
2020. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Lewis. Deputy Chief, thank you very much for your presentation tonight.
Thank you so much.
Up next, we have Director DeAndre to speak on Public Works.
Good evening. So I'll let you just read the mission there for a moment. It builds on the mission of the overall city, but focused on delivery of projects, programs, and services. So our organizational structure, these slides are broken down by our various divisions. So we are going to be covering 5 different funds that the Public Works Department oversees. So not only our general fund with our operating expenses, but also the SURF fund, the Service Center fund, our stormwater, as well as the concrete utilities. So all of those are wrapped up in this one presentation. As you can see here, it's broken down by staffing, and you can see in part, as for example, EAF, we have 1/4 of 2 positions that are dedicated to EAF and paid from EAF. So you'll see quite a bit of that through the presentation where there's partial positions allocated to different divisions. But overall, we have 62 positions within the department. And similar to police, we touch on all aspects of the strategic plan with a focus on, again, delivering projects as well as sustainable and safe services, whether that be snow and ice, taking care of our infrastructure, and maintaining our city facilities. So we're going to just jump through some of this, but we did do an analysis of some of our outsourced services. And as you can see there on the title, that's for the general fund. And we did this for the service center, the stormwater fund. And then so we'll jump to the summary enhancement requests in the interest of time. So we do have several for the general fund. Starting with, are we going to go into these individually? Yeah, so we just to support our traffic division, we do want to purchase some additional cameras. This would allow us to do our own data collection internally versus sending that out like we do currently. And this way we can provide that service and reduce those costs. Similarly, we've had more increase or interest in doing these speed radar signs. These are able to be mounted at different locations, so they are intended to be portable. And it's a traffic calming measure that's relatively inexpensive for us to deploy. Third, continuing on with our asset management efforts, we would like to build in and purchase some additional modules for our asset management software, which is Cartograph, and focused on our building module or for facilities, as well as our stormwater module. Second, we would like to introduce or reintroduce a position for the traffic engineer / program manager. It has been difficult for us to fill this position. We actually changed this to a deputy director position, and now just based on need, we're identifying that we do need some type of position to oversee traffic. So we're still working with the title. It is challenging to fill this position based on open positions with other communities, but we do feel that this is needed to be reinstated due to the increased workload there. We are also wanting to upgrade one of our vehicle lifts out at the service center. So this is a very large, as you can see, 36,000 pounds. It has become unreliable and reached its service life. And so we need to replace that so that we can continue to maintain some of our very heavy, large equipment. Street signs, so we have gone through, staff has gone through and modified all of the street name signs that are at the low ones at the corners on residential streets. We still need to do that at all of our signalized intersections. So what we're proposing here is that we would purchase pre-made overhead street signs and then install those with staff. So rather than having us do that internally, we would have those sent out as a one-time fee. Then purchasing a van for our building services division. Right now, what they're using other vehicles to basically move equipment, as well as things like not only our cleaning equipment, but portable tables and chairs around. And so this would allow them to do that in a safer manner because it's a lower level in the rear to access and load and unload those types of materials. And then just general requests for due to inflation and increasing costs within our general operations and maintenance budget. We anticipate that we need an additional $41,000 to cover repair and maintenance supplies. This also includes items like cleaning supplies, custodial supplies, that sort of thing. And then an increase in our technical training as well. So again, within our operations and maintenance division, just to enhance staff's skill set. And then our trash services, we're anticipating that this is going to go up as well, just based on our costs to date so far. A lot of this is the street sweeping disposal, the materials that we have to dispose of based on what we collect through that program. Then for the service center, so that was for the general fund. These are the enhancement requests for the service center. We're anticipating 2 items there. So again, just kind of a general commodities increase, primarily focused on fuel. This is the account that we pay for fuel out of that covers all the departments. And then our trash service, so the actual disposal of trash that's collected at the service center and disposing of that. So again, based on current costs to date, we're anticipating that need to go up for next year. For the Stormwater Division, we are requesting 2 enhancements. So one is an additional stormwater engineer position. This was identified in the Stormwater Master Plan. And just based on the number of projects that we're undertaking and the anticipated workload that's coming up, we would like to add that additional position at this time. And then we do need to be in compliance with our MS4 permit, which is basically a stormwater quality permit that's overseen by the state that we manage on behalf of the city. That we do want to purchase some compliance software that will allow us to better manage that program and ensure compliance as we report back to the state each year. We are anticipating an increase in revenue for the Stormwater Fund based on an increase in the rates that was considered previously by City Council, and it's again on the agenda this evening for the regular meeting. And future considerations, again, continue to focus on our asset management. And so ensuring that we're keeping up with all of our assets and taking those one by one to focus on those and do more of a deep dive to do that inventory planning and execution. And as well as additional construction inspection and concrete testing. And then finally, building design and planning. So we know that we're looking right now at the service center for potential expansion out there, as well as some potential reuses, either of this space or other options for City Hall. And then finally, looking at the next round of projects beyond those initial 4 that we identified for the stormwater program. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director. Any questions from council? Mayor Pro Tem?
Just a question regarding the service center. As we're considering replacing this lift, my question is, will that project be affected by any future changes we make at the service center? For instance, if we install this, is this a permanently installed device? And are we losing the money if we end up moving it?
Sure. It's my understanding, I'll just ask for clarification, but I believe that's portable or it can be reinstalled. Yes, it will be able to be reinstalled or relocated.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Member Noonan-Kemp.
Yes, on enhancement number 7, the building services van, can you speak a little bit more about the need there? My understanding from your description is that the current van is in working order, but it's not as convenient based on how high it is off the ground.
We do have vans that are used by our facilities maintenance techs. The specific building services, which is our custodial staff and day porters, they actually use small pickup trucks to transport materials. I think the advantage of this is that the low platform in the back allows them more easily to lift things in and out of the van rather than up onto the truck bed of those pickup vans. So we do have some options to use for this, but these other vans are being used by other people at this time. So we do feel the need that we need to add this to the fleet.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, Director DeAndre, thank you very much for the presentation. Up next, we have Director Van Rye to talk utilities and SSPDR. Did I get that right? No.
SPR.
SPR, that's what it is. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Actually, with the, I'll focus on utilities tonight. We're actually going to go through SPR's budget in detail at the Joint Councils meeting in July. So in the interest of time, we can probably skip over most of that. It's there for your background to help understand what some of the costs are in the sewer fund, which should help make up some of the time. All right, the water enterprise. You can see what our overview is. We supply drinking water to the community. That's a lot of words to say we supply drinking water to the community. Here's how we're broken up. We have an engineering division, a business solutions division, an operations and maintenance division. You can see from the list the activities. Organizational structure, there are 3 deputy directors. We report up through a water and sewer board. As director of utilities, I'm also the board president of the Englewood and McClellan Reservoir Foundation. Within business solutions, we have 8 FTEs. In engineering, we have 8 FTEs. And within operations and maintenance, we have 39. Strategic plan connection touches most aspects of the strategic plan, focused mostly on infrastructure and transportation, safety and sustainability. It's supplying safe drinking water to our community. We outsource a number of things, and so what we've done is we've listed the services that we outsource. We are continually looking at whether something should be outsourced or done in-house. It's a constant balance that we're refining. But here are some examples. So locating services is one that we used to do in-house. We find it actually is more effective if we do it externally. This is how many organizations perform their locates. But you can also see tree trimming and ditch maintenance and professional services for rate and fee support and postage for mailing and outside printing, a number of things like that. And then in engineering, professional services is a big number for us, and that's essentially most of that is our water rights. So we have $400,000 for Berg Hill, our water rights attorney, $350,000 for Martin and Wood, and then $400,000 for general engineering on-call support. And then you can see we participate in O&M costs for Meadow Creek Reservoir. That's up outside of Fraser that Denver Water manages on our behalf, but is an Englewood facility. Water fund enhancements, we have 4 FTE, well, 4 positions. It totals 3.3 FTEs. You can see what they are. They're a senior construction inspector. As we ramp up the investment, we have essentially about $100 million to spend over the next 7 years in the water fund infrastructure, and so this is to have someone to inspect the construction as it occurs. A couple of utilities systems tech that rounds out our structure for being able to respond to line breaks, but also proactively maintain the distribution system so that we're doing both as opposed to being reactive. And then a water plant operator will finally get us the flexibility to be able to be 2 people at the water plant 24/7. And then when we have someone go on vacation or we have a position open, we'll have a little bit of cushion to be able to accommodate those types of situations. Right now, we still have a couple hours where there's only 1 person at the water plant, and for 2 years, my goal has been to get it to 2-person staffing 24/7. We're almost there. And then the last enhancement is the enhancement to the comp study. And then you can see that total personnel enhancements is 477, and then commodities and contractuals. This is chemicals, energy, things like that. So I talked about personnel, contractual. You can see what it's machinery, parts. It's just an increased cost of maintaining the system. Revenue proposal. So we have a revenue plan based in our based in our financial plan where water rates we increase it 4.5% per year to keep them stable. Water connection fees, we look at ENR, Engineering News Record, and the cost index. It moved from 2.7 to 3.25, so we're recommending to go with that. And then this is the on year where we raise the capital investment fee by $1. So if you recall in the financial plan, we do that every 2 years. And then future considerations in the water fund is taste and odor and hardness is one of our main focuses. Getting fully staffed to be able to not only be reactive but proactive. Lead service lines is obviously a significant issue. And then the last one that we added here is fiscal responsibility and transparency. So it's really sticking to those financial plans long term so that as we hit these circumstances where we end up with potentially high inflation rates, that we can actually absorb that over the course of time in the financial plans. If it becomes a sustained change, then we have to go back and look at the financial plans, but at least we have the plans in place to be able to react to them. So that is it for water. Sewer is very similar. We take wastewater away from your house. So that's a lot of words to say. We take sewer away from your house. Very similar, engineering, business solutions, O&M. The sewer and water co-locate in utilities. Same structure. It's just a smaller portion of staff dedication to sewer because it's a smaller requirement. Strategic plan, it's more about protecting water resources and sustainability, but it's also infrastructure. Outsourced services, one of the biggest ones is USIC, the locating services. And then we have business solutions, so WIFIA support, rate and fee support, postage and mailing. Now keep in mind that we bill our connector districts, so there's money there. And then buildings, we're potentially looking to hire some new billing staff, and we'd rework the billing area to accommodate that. Outsourced services are hydraulic models and CCTV and flow monitoring. That's getting a grasp of how much wastewater is actually in the collection system. And then you can see our enhancement requests. So we have the sewer proportion of the senior construction inspector, the utility system tech, and the two utility system techs, and that rounds out the what was shown in water. And then the billing, the 3 billing positions, you see 3 FTEs there. That is if we move to monthly billing for the connector districts. We have had a request from the connector districts to look into doing that. We actually did plan for that in the connector fee analysis that we did last fall, so it is planned for. And so if we move forward with that, we'd hire these positions. If we didn't move forward with that, we wouldn't hire these positions. And then the compensation study. And then we talked about that enhancement, that's personnel, commodities, contractual, same type of thing. It's just the increase in cost of doing business. The revenue proposal, 4.5% is what we'd be sticking to. You can see the change in outside sewer rates. This is based on the connector fee analysis that we adopted last fall. The inside sewer rates for treatment and the inside treatment and collection. And then the sewer connection fee follows the same ENR index. Future year considerations are staffing, asset management, and then funding. The city's half, largely, a little bit more than half the funding requirement for South Platte Renew. How do you do?
Well, you did well, Director Van Rye. You want a number, don't you?
8:30.
Any questions from council? Mayor Pro Tem.
My question is in regards to the proposed compensation studies. I look at these numbers and I have to admit some curiosity on the numbers being proposed because in our last session, we approved a full class and comp study for city staff, which is a very large organization, on a $175,000 contract. So $280,000 for a class and comp study, or for a compensation study, for what I count 55 employees in 9 different classes, seems to not quite pass.
So that's to account for the results of the study. So that's to account for the study is likely going to show that a number of positions are under market.
Okay.
And so that's what those numbers are. Sorry, that's probably unclear.
Okay, that's what I didn't understand. That
yeah,
wasn't
it's
clear.
not a study. It's to implement the results of the study.
Okay,
across
that makes
water.
sense.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Member Russell.
Thank you. One of the things that I saw in looking at this, which is very troubling to me, is the amount of expense to bill monthly versus quarterly. I mean, that just jumped off the page at me, and I thought we weren't given this information before. I mean, postage monthly and sending the bills out to be printed. I think that is a substantial amount of money that's being put out there. So, I mean, I could be wrong, but.
Well, I think when you look at that number, what you have to consider is right now we bill 35,000 accounts annually, and that's all the connector districts. So we bill those accounts annually. So there's a lot of postage in there for that. when you look at the 13,000 accounts going from quarterly to monthly, there was an incremental increase, but it was not a significant increase. So while it looks like while that number does look significant, it is for the largely for the connector district. So if we move to monthly billing for the connector districts, which is based on a request that they have made of us, and we would do on their behalf, at that point in time, we budget for those costs, and then that becomes part of what we ultimately have built into the connector district analysis that we did last fall. Those numbers are built into that analysis so that they are recouped from those connector districts.
So currently, the connector districts are still being billed quarterly,
Once a year.
once a year.
Connector districts are billed once a year.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Member Noonan-Camp.
Yeah, my question is actually also on billing. I understand that the billing is it specialist? I can't remember the title, is under the sewer fund for what you've just described. But I believe that you're looking to also modernize some of the water billing. I don't think it's included here, but can you update us on electronic billing, automatic payments? Are there plans to do that right now?
Yeah, so that's underway right now. So there's a project underway, which is implementation of a new billing system. This was a project that kicked off almost a year and a half ago, and we are getting very, very close. When we make that switch, we want to make sure it's 100% right so that we don't create a lot of confusion. So right now, actually the billing staff and Sarah and her staff are spending a lot of time in the testing environment right now. So they're doing two jobs right now. They're analyzing this new system and testing it to verify that it does work while they're still doing their regular customer service job. Additionally, we are modernizing the bill itself. So we are going to a newer bill, much like you see with some of your other utility bills that have more information on your usage, things like that. So that is another thing that we anticipate rolling out sometime this fall. Our plan right now is to finalize, get that billing system transitioned over so we have a seamless, smooth transition, and then follow up quickly after that with a new bill.
Great. Well, sign me up. You can save a stamp on me, and hopefully we'll see some postage savings for some others as well. Thanks.
City Manager Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to Director Van Rye's colleagues. We are now ahead of schedule, and I was wondering if I could ask Director Van Rye a question.
Sure.
You had kind of gone over with some of us the reason why we're staffing up so much. And, I think last year when I first started seeing us staffing up for these capital projects, it raised, my eyebrow. And I think it'd be helpful for you to explain to council kind of the reason for that and how we're acting like a much bigger city for the next several years.
Yeah, and so I drew this graph, and essentially what it is if you think of, I'll do it in the air with my hand. So if you think of the utility functioning at a certain level for 30 years, which was a largely minimally investing level. And so what happens during that time is every year more things add up into the queue. And so you get more and more things into the queue. And so right now in the last couple of years, we've made a conscious choice as a city to address all that has built up in the queue. And so we're in this massive ramp up period because we're not only addressing what would be a normal proactive investment as we go type of city, we're trying to ramp up to that type of city, but also we're trying to address this massive backlog of capital. So this isn't just the water and sewer fund alone, this is the city as a whole. So during this period, which I estimated somewhere around 7 years, maybe 7 to 10 years, we're actually functioning like a much larger city as it relates to capital need on a year-to-year basis, because we're trying to get to a point where we have an equilibrium of ongoing investment over time that's not at the minimal investment, but is at an appropriate level investment. But we have to clear this big mountain before we get to here. And so to clear this mountain is extra investment. And my estimate in looking at it from a utility perspective is it's likely around 7 to 10 years. You think about lead service lines, you think about trying to upgrade the water plant, you think about modernizing the metering system, all those kinds of things. and doing them all at once, the staffing required to execute that is not a staffing of a 35-person city that's at a normal rate they've been at for the last 20 or 30 years. We're trying to clear the hill and then get to a point of equilibrium. And so that's why you see what almost looks like a higher level of staffing investment, because you can't clear this mountain without people to execute the work and execute the projects and catch up on all the things that have been underinvested in over 3 or 4 decades. Is that?
Yes, and I would just point out that we really have this similar situation in stormwater, although, you only saw one additional staff member. But again, we have ramped up capital spending to a level we cannot execute on the money that you all are giving us and the ratepayers are giving us unless we have the staffing to do that. And at some point, as Director Van Rye, particularly I think in his department, you'll see a stabilization where we can reduce staffing levels to a more kind of maintenance, but still making investments as we go. But that's the reason for these big increases. And I say that not only for you and the public, but also for city staff, who will see big increases in staffing in the utilities and the enterprise funds, because we are getting ready to execute on significant capital projects. And we won't have that ability to do that in the general fund.
Yeah, and to add to that, just one last thing. So there's, in the water fund, there's 20 million in the bank. That helped to, that's the 51% of costs, and we just secured $60.5 million in loans that are 49% of costs for the water and the sewer fund investment. So if you take that 60.9 in the WIFIA loans that we just closed, essentially double that, because that's only, essentially, that's 49% of total project costs. So that says across the water and the sewer fund, just WIFIA funded projects is $120 million. And that's a 7-year window to get those started and completed. So we have 5 years to start them, we have 7 years to complete them. And so to execute on 120 million just in WIFIA, and then on top of that, if we get infrastructure money for lead service lines, and then we also have other non-WIFIA funded projects, which are several millions of dollars, as well, tens of millions of dollars. When you look at the whole over that 7-year period, it requires a lot of not just in-house staffing, but consulting and program management to actually execute that, to get us from here to where we're at this new stabilization. And then as it relates to staffing levels, the way the job market is, we anticipate that when we start to get to here, we'll be able to downsize through attrition. Just because that's, people aren't staying at jobs for 30 and 40 years anymore.
Member Noonkemp.
Just in a response to that, I appreciate the clarification from both city manager and yourself. And from my time at the Allen treatment plant, concur that these are really needed investments that we haven't done in a long time. And so that doesn't raise my concern. But I do think, to your point about attrition, the question for me, and what I believe will probably be the question for many of our citizens, is it's probably very easy to get comfortable, right, at this high line. And I want to ensure that the thoughtfulness and planning that's gone into raising us to where we need to be for this period of time, that we see the same thoughtfulness on how we do that stabilization and ensure that there's an intention there and that there's not kind of an afterthought where we don't actually take that into consideration.
Sure, and I think one of the fundamental structural changes that we've done both in these utilities as well as the stormwater fund and public works is the planning prior to 2019 was year-over-year planning. So it was just year to year to year to year. We now have 5, 10, and 20-year plans that look out to the 20-year window, and then we have a parallel financial plan to ensure that we're meeting the needs 15 years from now, and we're building our rates and our fees to accommodate that. And so that is based on a level of service that's identified as we go through that recurring master planning process. So master plans are something that you do once, and then you look at them every year, and then at about a 5-year interval, you do them all over again. So about every 5 years, you do a holistic overhaul of your master plan, because you have new data, you have projects that are done, and you have new priorities. And so getting that type of planning process in place, coupled with a financial planning process, is how you avoid potentially not getting to this homeostasis.
We'll hold you to it. Thank you.
Director Van Rice, I have one question. I'm still a little confused on the maintenance portion of it going to monthly billing. So we haven't gone live yet with the new billing system, but don't we already have it configured for monthly billing? I'm just trying to understand, like, is this just out of scope items that just we didn't consider as part of the connector districts moving to monthly billing? Just, can you help me understand that a little bit better?
So the progression to monthly billing is we went to monthly billing under our old system, which is Advance, and that happened last year. Advance and Cogsdale, which is our new monthly billing system, are actually owned by the same parent company. So they're actually competitors, but they're under the same parent company, which actually helped us facilitate some of that transfer of information. So what they did is they programmed it from quarterly to monthly billing under the old system, which made it then easier to holistically move it over to the new Cogsdale system. So that will occur. We anticipate sometime this summer, probably late summer, that we'll be switching over to the new Cogsdale system. Then at that point in time, what that allows for is the ability to then engage with the connector districts, and over the next year, look at taking that Cogsdale system and installing a change from the monthly billing system, or the annual billing system, to the monthly billing system. And so we wouldn't even start doing that until mid-2023. So we start the monthly billing, or the annual billing process, in June. We are already, with the workload of what we have right now, we are already behind. We don't have enough time to do it by June of 2023. So this would be in advance of June of 2024, would likely be the soonest that we could move connector districts to monthly billing. Does that help?
It does a little bit. It's just complicated in terms of just software and not going live yet, so I'm sure that we'll be talking about it soon, so, okay. Any other questions, Mayor Pro Tem?
Is there an advantage to putting the connector districts on monthly billing?
You know, so I think it goes to, you know, I hear every now and then from people I know that are in the connector districts that once a year they get their $400 sewer bill, and they don't plan for it all year, and then all of a sudden they get hit with a $400 sewer bill. So if anything, it goes back to most utilities are billed. So if you think about your energy Excel bill, or your cable bill, or your cell phone bill, those are on a monthly cycle. So most of those types of bills are on a monthly cycle. The advantage, I think, is to the customer that they don't have this 1 year, you know, hit of a $450 bill.
So these bills are actually going out to places that are in the connector districts, like my parents, for instance, who live in one of the connector districts. They're getting an annual bill from South Platte rather than from their connector district?
Well, they get an annual bill from the city of Englewood because their agreement is through the city of Englewood. So Englewood Utility Billing bills the connector districts for those services.
So we're not billing the connector district, though. We're billing the people who are in the connector district.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. So we send out the actual bill on behalf of the connector district.
That's what I didn't quite grasp. Okay, now I understand why we would want to go to monthly.
Yeah, so we send out 35,000 bills. Is that about right? Yeah, so about 35,000 bills.
Member Anderson?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Van Wright. And just to clarify that, this isn't just an increase, the FTE associated with monthly billing in the connector districts isn't just paid for by the city of Englewood. Their rates are going to, the connector district rates are paying for that increase. Am I right on that?
That's right. We built it into that connector district model that we anticipated this, and it largely comes from Southgate. The general manager of Southgate said to me, hey, would you consider moving to monthly billing? We think it'd be better for our customers. It's what they see on the water side. And so we said, sure. And so we planned for that as we were building that connector district methodology. Right. The connector district methodology, no matter what, ensures that there's some kind of a true up at a 5-year period. So if we overestimated the cost that we're billing them, we'll go back and look 5 years back and see what the difference was. If we underbilled them, we'll go back and then we'll assess them more. And so that was something that they really wanted, was they wanted They had no problem with the methodology. They just wanted to make sure that there was regular intervals to make sure it was based on real numbers as opposed to we're guessing into the future. And so that's how, so even if we planned for it to go into effect in 2022, and we didn't plan for inflation to be where it is now, they almost are somewhat offsetting. And so we'll see where we land at 5 years and then go back and look at the numbers. And then if there's a difference, that's what we'll factor in moving forward.
Got it. Thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions? Director Van Rye, we're right on time, so
Thank you very much.
thank you. And Director Lowe, we'll let you take us to the top of the hour with the CIP.
All right, thank you. Our approach to 2023 operating budget is to staff will build up, council will help us to prioritize projects and initiatives, and we're going to optimize the results based on resources, because the 2023 operating budget is ultimately a reflection of council's priorities. So let's talk about the 2023 CIP. In April, the staff reviewed 5-year preliminary capital improvement plan with the council. Typically, the city receives $5 million annually from the vehicle use tax, building use tax, and Arapahoe Road and Bridge tax for the public improvement fund. But for 2022, we receive a large plan review fee, so we're able to fund $8 million CIP. As you recall, we have a combined CIP session with the commissions, board, and committees. So this is a matrix I want to share with council. As discussed, the Planning and Zoning Commission, Englewood Transportation Advisory Committee, ETAC, and Library Board all submit their priority to council. You can see their request on the right column. They itemize their priority for the project for $8 million. So when we had an internal conversation, we had a very hard time just to pick the capital projects for $8 million. So we become very creative. We review the first quarter CIP list and see if we could defer, delay, repurpose some of the projects. We identify additional $650,000. Therefore, the staff's recommendation for the Public Improvement Fund and Capital Project Fund, we still did not get to 8.6 million. We'll have over 10 million. So we really need a council to help us to prioritize our projects in conjunction with the recommendation from all the board, commission, and committees. You can see from your packet, this is a matrix. We want to make council's decision-making process easier. So we list all the funds on the left side. You can see trusts, conservation trust fund, open space fund. We also group the projects based on ongoing project or on one-time project. Also, we group similar projects together. Tonight, Public Works Director Deandra is here to review the projects in the Capital Improvement Fund and Capital Project Fund and Capital Improvement Fund. For Parks and Rec and IT, they are going to present their prioritized list with you next week. So we can see, can we switch to show column A? No, column A, yeah. So you can see Public Improvement Fund and Capital Project Fund. Could we move to the right a little bit? Yeah, you can see the staff list total project close to 10 million, 9.9 million. We only identify 8.8 million, 650,000. So we still need to cut the spending 1.3 million. So we want the council to review this list and help us to prioritize the projects. If you have any questions, Director Deandra is here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Director Lowe. Are you ready for questions from council?
No, just if you want to go over, can we show column F? Can we turn this to left side? Yeah, to show the name if we go up. Also, the projects list as tier 1 is in bold. So if we go up, we can see road and bridge, the request 300,000, Union Avenue Bridge rehab 400,000. So you can see the recommendation for all the board, commission, committee, and staff from your package.
Mayor, if I could, we, in years past, have tried to get you as close as we can to the number in the budget, but we really wanted to make sure that council had an opportunity to really fully weigh in on your priorities before we just, got this down to that 8 million number. So certainly we are here tonight and over the next few weeks, ready to receive your direction on areas where you think either the dollar amount is too high, or you would simply remove a project or maybe move it to the following year. So we wanted to give you the opportunity to give us that direction.
Thank you, City Manager Lewis. Open up to questions for council. Member Noonekamp, you're up first.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two brief questions just to start us out. One, in our packet, there are several items marked in red where I think there's been changes. Can you clarify what that means for us?
Yes, after we present the CIP list to council in April, we talked to a few project managers. They decided to make the change. So if you see any projects in red, that's a change after our presentation to council in April.
And that reflects changes from staff, not changes from boards and commissions.
Correct.
Great. And then also, I believe we're getting priorities from the Budget Advisory Committee as well. They're not included here.
Very good question. Budget Advisory Committee members had a very robust conversation. Two council members, Councilmember Russell and Mayor Pro Tem Ward was present. So the finance staff did receive the recommendation from 3 back members, but they did not submit a memo including their unified decision. So we did not include their recommendation in this presentation.
Will we have time when they present to us on August 1st to still include in this conversation, or will this be too late?
We could request them to send a unified recommendation to council. So did you want them to send this to April, including in their annual report on August 1st?
I'm interested in their perspective, but I will defer to my colleagues who are liaisons to that committee if they think that's not a good idea.
I would like to hear their feedback. I'll also note that this is the first year
time.
that committee has done the project in this way, so I'm not incredibly astonished that we didn't get feedback at this point from them. I think that'll be an ongoing process in the future, and I would suspect that their August 1st report will have some information for us on just general capital priorities.
Yeah, because our goal is to make the decision next week on the 27th. So if council would want us to delay the decision making until still 27th, next Monday?
I would say yes on that. I think we should proceed forward as planned. And if, in the event that we do need to make some adjustments, but at the very least, the feedback they give us in this cycle will inform what we do in the next cycle, so.
All right, so if I hear you correctly, we'll make decision at the next council meeting on June 27th, but encourage back to submit their CIP list in their annual report for August 1st. Because if there are any changes in between, we still have time, because we will not finalize operating budget and capital until August 8th. If there's one last minute change for CIP, we still can address it on August 8th.
Yeah, and I think that's a good plan going forward. I'll also note that, it's their option. If they want to weigh in on capital, they can. If they don't, they're not obligated to. So whatever the board decides to do, I'm good with.
Okay.
Member Russell, did you want to weigh in on that?
Yes, thank you. I think that the discussion they had, that the evening we were there, was invaluable. And I kind of wish that most of council would go back and look at that, because I think their reasoning is much more amazing. I've been a little bit disappointed in the past, but all of a sudden things came together and I see value in this committee because they have the time and their reasoning, in the way they do things. I think we need input from them. I mean, even if council wants to go back and watch that meeting, I think it would be helpful. I think there are some things here, just some of the things that they discussed about they're hesitant to move forward starting new projects when we have ongoing expenses every year. This is the first I've heard this, and it just, I think they're absolutely right on that, because we keep increasing, we add new projects, and then there's ongoing expenses from that the following year. And so anyway, I really would like them to weigh in.
Thank you, Member Russell. Member Anderson.
Yeah, I have a question on a separate subject. Could you describe again the sources of funds, the 8.65 million? It says, is that from Public Improvement Fund and Capital Projects Fund? And then what is the 650 the directors identified? Where's
Okay.
those funds coming?
So normally we receive 5 million for the capital project from building use tax, vehicle use tax, and Arapahoe County road and bridge tax, usually 5 million. But this year receive a large plan review fee. 1.2 million is allocated to general fund, 3 million building review get allocated to public improvement fund. Therefore, we have 8 million. But the staff has a long list for 2023 capital projects. So we went back to review our current 2022 capital project to see if we can delay or repurpose some of the outstanding balance. We funded $650,000. We're willing to forego those projects and repurpose the dollar amount for the additional project for 2023. That's how we get it. $8,650,000.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Director Lowe, I have one question. Actually, this might be for Director DeAndre, but in terms of just trying to figure out how to get this number down, I guess this was brought up in the previous discussion by Director Van Rye, but just based on bandwidth, Director DeAndre, you know, if we were to move forward with the CIP as is, are we able to do all of these projects next year, or is there a bandwidth issue?
Yes, we're still evaluating. I think that to some extent we are down have several open positions currently. So I think we're cautiously optimistic that we can, but we are currently evaluating that. So just as an example, what you see on the screen there, on the lower section with bridge repairs, so you see the line above is Union Avenue Bridge rehabilitation for $400,000. We feel we can accommodate that, but the bridge repairs at $300,000, probably an additional project for a different bridge, we would probably not be able to. So I think that's a good example of where we could cut and still meet, still be doing some bridge work yet in 2023.
Okay, because that's probably one thing that I would want to understand. Like, if there was just labor issues or just
Sure.
stating bandwidth, like understanding what we would deprioritize in order
Yep.
to get down to that
Gotcha.
amount.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, Mayor Pro Tem?
I believe we talked about this in previous conversations, but I notice Old Hampton, Complete Streets, Lafayette to Broadway, and then in parentheses it says potential grant. That's a $1.2 million request. The numbers here, are we assuming that we are getting that grant or we are not getting that grant?
The assumption is that we are. So that application is due this Friday.
Okay.
And we will probably know September, October, so before the budget is finalized, we should know that answer. So that will help refine that. If we do get that grant, then that would stay. If it doesn't, then it frees up $1.2 million for 2023.
Okay, so the $1.2 million is our share of cost on that?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Our necessary match for that.
City Manager Lewis, did you want to jump in first before? Oh, actually, no. Go ahead, City Manager Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to give kudos to Jackie and our directors who have capital projects. One of the exercises that Director Lowe took us through a few weeks ago was looking at the current list of funded capital projects. Which of those, how many of those have been closed out and had a little money left over? Which of those, priorities have shifted that council directed us to shift away? Which of those projects came in under budget but are under construction now? So we have identified, and I'll let Jackie fill in the blank, I think it was about $600,000 in savings from the current capital projects list that we, can use, and I think that that's been built into your assumptions. Is that the right number, Director Lowe?
Correct, 650,000.
Yes, and so I know that number was mentioned earlier, but it's been a really good process that I credit Director Lowe for keeping us on track on where the money is.
While we still have 5 minutes and Director DeAndrea is here, do you have any question about the project related to public works? You can see some of the ongoing, some is one time.
Any questions from council?
Or we can scroll down.
I do have one clarification, and again, I think this may be something that we talked about previously. Signal equipment upgrade and replacement versus signal replacement. Those are different lines. What are we doing differently on those things?
Could you tell me the number of the line signal?
Yes,
Like line
so
40.
it's on the second slide. The total of slide 2 is 2.085. Traffic signal replacement is a 0 line. And in the middle, fourth line, signal equipment upgrade and replacement is $150,000.
150,000. Okay, the other is,
Sorry, I'm following along in the packet. Probably the traffic signal replacement line didn't make the spreadsheet because it's a $0, I'm guessing. But they're listed differently in the packet on our slides. It's page 145 of the
Okay.
packet if anybody's following the packet.
okay.
Yes, I can answer that question, Mayor Pro Tem. The signal replacement at 0, we zeroed that out. So there are 2 different line items. The intent of the replacement is for the entire signal to be replaced. So we've typically budgeted that at $750,000 in the past. We know we're not going to achieve that next year, so that's why we as staff zeroed that out. The $150,000 for signal equipment upgrade and replacement are things like detection cameras, the controller box, fiber optics underneath the ground, those types of things. So components of the traffic signal that we either upgrade or replace each year at multiple different facilities or different signals to continue to keep them in working order.
And when we do an entire signal replacement, does that include the box and all the underlying apparatus and everything, or is that just moving new lights onto the pole?
Typically, we'll try and reuse as much of that equipment as possible. It depends on if it's still compatible with the software system, if it's outdated. Doing things like flashing yellow arrow requires a larger controller box and more sophisticated equipment to be able to provide that additional capacity.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Director Lowe, is there anything else that you want to add?
No, just want to answer council members' questions so we can make decision next week.
Sounds great. Don't think there's anything else from council, so. Director Lowe, thank you very much for the presentation, and all the directors as well for practicing in the mirror and getting us to the 7 p.m. Deadline that we asked for, so thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, I did want to start at 7 o'clock since we do have members of the public here, but does anybody want a break before we start? Mayor
I
Pro
could
Tem?
use 5 minutes.
We'll take the 5-minute break. It's just, we'll meet again at 7:05. Thank you, everyone. All right, members of council, back to your seats. Members of council, we want to get started again.
Test, test.
Test, test. All right, members of council, be seated. I think we're still missing one, though. Actually, we're still waiting on one member of council, so we'll give her another couple minutes. All right, everyone, we are back. I now call this meeting to order. If you're able to do so, if you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. City Clerk, if you could please take roll call.
Yes, good evening. Member Anderson?
Present.
Member Noonenkamp?
Present?
Member Russell?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Present.
Member Wink? Member Woodward?
Present.
Mayor Sierra?
Present.
Let the record show 6 presents.
Thank you, City Clerk. And Member Wing did let me know that she was going to be absent tonight. Moving on to agenda item 5, considerations of minutes from the previous session. Does anybody have any changes to make for the regular City Council meeting of June 6th? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve? Oh, you do.
I have a change. Didn't we have a fire marshal under number D, 1D?
City Clerk, do you have a note on that?
Wasn't that the fire marshal
Yeah,
that
we
was
did have
here
Fire Marshal
speaking?
Smith. Yeah, if we're able to add his name, which I'm guessing it's for the fireworks conversation,
For
correct?
the fireworks.
Okay. Yeah, if we could just add Fire Marshal Smith's name to it. Any other changes, Member Woodward?
That is it. With that, I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Can we please vote?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 6, appointments, communications, proclamations, recognition, resolution appointing members to various boards, commissions, and committees. Does anybody see any changes to make to 6A? Actually, I'll weigh in. I will be making a motion to amend, removing Mr. DeBoer from the CEAC. Just based on the communications that we received, I feel that it's probably best to not add Mr. DeBoer to the name, or to that board. Any comments, or can I get a motion to approve? And I guess I'll make that motion at that point, but can I get a motion to approve Resolution 6A?
I'll make the motion to approve 6A
Thank you, Member.
with your suggested deletion.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Actually, can we just make the straight resolution and then I'll make an amendment to the resolution? So we'll just do it as is, and then we'll get a second, and then I'll make a motion at that point, or a motion to amend at that point, Member Woodward. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Member Anderson. And then to my statement, I'd like to make a motion to amend, just removing Mr. DeBoer from the CEAC board. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Ward. Any comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
I believe I expressed my concerns at the study session, so I am glad to see this change this evening.
Thank you, Member Ward. Anyone else? No further comment on my end. I prefer not to state anything else, but just based on some information that we have received, I just would prefer to just keep Mr. DeBoer off the board. And with that, can we please vote?
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you. There's no reason to do that any further, or?
Need a vote on the main motion.
Okay. There we go. Now can we vote on the main motion with the amendment?
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 7. This is recognition of scheduled public comment. The deadline to sign up to speak for scheduled public comment is Wednesday by 5 p.m. prior to the meeting through the city clerk's office. This is an opportunity for the public to address city council. There is an expectation that the presentation will be conducted in a respectful manner. Council may ask questions for clarification, but there will not be any dialogue. And please limit your presentation to 5 minutes. Tonight, Member Woodward will be providing a response to our citizens. And up first is going to be Bonnie Mucklow, an Englewood resident, to address council regarding leash laws. Good evening, Miss Mucklow. Sorry, did I pronounce that correctly?
You sure did. Hi.
Miss
I'm
Mucklow,
Bonnie.
if you could just state your name and your address or your cross streets. And
Yeah, Bonnie Mucklow, 5041 South Clarkson Street in Englewood. So that's Clarkson and Bellevue. I'm a psychotherapist, and I am the mother of 2 dogs, Crisco, named after Crisco shortening because I like to bake pies, and Lexi, short for Lexapro. It's an antidepressant medicine. I have been an unleashed dog walker at Centennial Lake since 2016. I'm representing a group here tonight of probably 35 morning walkers of dogs at Centennial Park. We were very crushed when the restrictive changes in leash law happened in January. We heard all kinds of rumors about why that had happened. And we heard that there were the police there every day and that there was violence and there were dogs being attacked. None of that had any of us seen since 2015. And we also consider ourselves friends of the Centennial Lake because we go around and pick up after the fishermen who leave their lines and hooks and things like that, as well as trash. So we have put together a petition. We're asking you for some special consideration to replace the law that passed in January and instead allow us to walk dogs unleashed from 6 in the morning until 10, so that this group of people can continue to do that around Centennial Lake. We are proposing in this that we register our dogs with the city, maybe for $25 a dog, and be considered signed up as an unleashed dog for that period of time. So this is what the petition will see. You will see and you'll notice that there are 103 signatures from people who walk in the Centennial Lakes.
Ms. Mucklow, is there anything else that you want to state? Is there anything else to your presentation tonight?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Mucklow. We could pass them down. So, Ms. Mucklow, thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions from council? Seeing none. Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead.
So will you please leave your contact information with the clerk so that if a member of council wants to contact you, we can do that?
With this person here? Yeah, I was going to ask what happens next, and yeah.
Yep, thank you.
Ms. Mucklow, thank you for your presentation. There will be a response by Member Woodward at the end of public comment. And up next is Mr. Mike Shoup, an Englewood resident, to address council. Good evening, Mr. Shoup. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
Yeah, my name is Mike Shoup, and I live at 4621 South Lincoln Street. I have been a resident of Englewood for roughly 25 of my 36 years of life, and I can't think of a better city to raise my 2 children. I want to talk today about our streets. First, I want to thank the City Council and the staff for the wonderful work they have done to improve access for other modes of transportation. Bike lanes, while not perfect, are definitely a much needed improvement, have done wonders to reduce the stresses of riding along some of our streets. I am very happy about the plans I have seen to improve Floyd Avenue west of Broadway and some of the other plans. Keep it up, guys. As I'm sure most of you have heard, on the morning of June 4th, Johnny Lucero Jr. lost his life on a stretch of Broadway about 3 blocks from where I live. He was trying to get to work. He was struck by a fast-moving car while trying to cross Broadway and thrown into a building. The car also struck the building, destroying a portion of it. This was not a car accident, but a fatal crash. I want you all to take a quick moment to think about a question I have. Given 4 values of speed, traffic volume, safety, and cost, which of those 4 would you pick as your top priority? I'm hoping most of you would pick safety. If we look at Broadway, especially like the section south of Hampden, it is abundantly clear that this street was designed with a priority of speed and traffic volume as the top 2 priorities. It is also clear that the speed and volume of cars was prioritized over the safety of pedestrians and bicyclists. This was not always the case. Most Englewood residents know about the Cherolyn trolley, the horse car, right? That moved people from downtown Englewood to very near the same location. It moved people. Broadway was originally a street designed to move people, not cars. Broadway is now what Strongtowns' Charles Marone would call a strode. It's a mix between a street and a road. In the book Confessions of a Recovering Engineer, the author Charles Marone discusses the difference between a street and a road. A road is a high-speed connection between 2 places, and a street is a platform for building community wealth. Streets are where local access happens and people want to get to. Stroads are the hybrid between roads and streets, basically like the futon of our street network. They try to attempt both things, but they don't really do a good job at it. It is this design as a strode that contributed to that fatal crash on the morning of June 4th. Its high design speed gave the young driver the confidence to drive fast. Johnny needed to get to his barber shop that is right off of this strode. These 2 use cases are not necessarily very compatible with each other. A gut reaction might be to lower the speed limit from 35 miles per hour to something lower. This would also probably not work very well, as one of my neighbors on next door put it very sarcastically, oh great, another speeding car on Broadway. Speed limits don't really do a whole lot to alter the speed of a street. Just ask any traffic engineer about a street's like 85th percentile speed. So the solution is not an easy one, but it is a necessary one. Broadway and the other stroads like it in our community need to be redesigned. Broadway needs to be redesigned as a street. We need to narrow the lanes. We need to tighten the turns. We need to create edge friction. Instead of a design speed, we need to redesign it with a maximum target speed of no more than 25 miles per hour. Mistakes on our streets should be paid for in fender benders and shattered headlights instead of in human lives. The young driver should have hit a parked car, a bollard, a curb, something before he hit Johnny Lucero Jr. I'm raising 2 young children in this city. I want them to be able to travel around on this city on foot or on bicycles, just like I did growing up, and have them be safe. This car crash on Broadway has me worried for them that our city streets are not safe. Not because of criminals, but because of cars. I'd like to suggest to the mayor pro tem, and each council member to read this book from Charles Marone called Confessions of a Recovering Engineer. I picked this up at Tattered Cover. You can get it online. You can get it wherever you buy fine books. You will learn quite a lot about how our roads and streets were designed and how we as a city can do so much better. I'd also like to ask the city, when considering major projects on our street, consider what I've said and to place safety as our top priority, even if it means sacrificing speed and the volume of cars. Thanks for your time.
Mr. Shoup, thank you very much for your words. Any questions? Member Anderson, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. I would ask the same question Mayor Pro Tem asked for the previous speaker. Would you be willing to share your contact information with the city clerk? Because I'd love to have a chat with another Chuck Marone fan.
Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, Mr. Shoup, thank you very much for your time. And that concludes scheduled public comments. We'll now move on to recognition of unscheduled public comment. Same rules exist. You're just limited to 3 minutes, and it looks like we have one speaker. Am I correct? We have Mr. Les Knack with Englewood, and he's here to speak on 4th of July. Good evening, Mr. Knack. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
Les Knack, 4775 South Grant, close to probably Union and Logan, in that area.
Sounds great.
Okay.
You can begin. Thank you, Mr. Knack.
Mayor, thank you. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, even though it's on a subject that I understand that has been closed. But it's on the 4th of July, which at the last meeting or 2 weeks ago was voted not to have. I've lived in Englewood since 1951. I joined a young man's organization in '62. It was the Englewood JCs. They were involved in shooting the annual fireworks display for the city of Englewood. They got involved because the merchants of Englewood came to the JCs and said, we've been doing this and we no longer can. You have the manpower, so if you supply the manpower, we'll supply the funds. So on a donation basis, the Englewood merchants funded this show. I've been involved with it shortly after I got into the JCs. There's several things that were mentioned 2 weeks ago that I'd like to address, and one was about the how dry it could be. And It's been dry for a lot of times. We happen to live in Colorado. And for a number of years, I was the lead technician for the fireworks display. I gave this up 6 or 7 years ago to the gentleman that's with me tonight, Robert Kovac. And he now has been the lead technician. I guess I'm out of time.
No, actually, you still have another minute. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. It's our job to put on a safe display for the citizens of Englewood. And we try to do that. We have a drop zone. We don't allow people inside that drop zone. Just outside the drop zone is an area that was discussed 2 weeks ago. It's the dog park, the perimeter there, the grass. We've always had a fire truck up at the north end of the park there that can take care of those kind of mishaps. The wind is usually out of the northeast, and that doesn't seem to have affected us very often. But it's just been a big part of my life. It's been a big part of Englewood's life. And, a few years ago, it was canceled because of COVID.
Mr.
And
Knack,
last year, there was a vote of 4-3 for it. This year, it's 4-3 against it.
Mr.
I
Knack,
don't want this to become a habit.
Mr. Knack, thank you very much for your time tonight. You are over, but really appreciate you coming and speaking tonight on the 4th of July. Let's see if there's any questions from council. Member Woodward.
I have one question. Have you been doing the fireworks recently?
Have I?
Yes.
I've been a helper on the team that does it. Robert Kovac is the lead technician, and I have helped do some of the wiring
Okay.
for the finale and things
Okay.
like that.
And are you local to the metro area here then, or
Am I what?
local?
Oh,
I mean, I don't understand. There was a mention of out of town last week. And that's what I was
Well,
just trying to get to understand. I thought
don't-
the operators came from out
okay,
of town.
I don't sell the show to the city of Englewood, which I understand from 2 weeks ago. The show has been bought, and it's the property of the city of Englewood. I work really for the fireworks company that supplies you the show. They hire myself, or now they're hiring Robert to fire a safe show. And I've been, like I said, I've been doing this since 64, 65, along in that area. I started off, I had to sell hot dogs in order to gain my stripes to become involved with the fireworks.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Just one follow-up. You said you've been involved in some way or another in the 4th of July event and the fireworks since 1964.
Yes.
In that time, how many shows or annual events have been canceled? I've been in Englewood about 10 years now, and I believe we're on our 3rd cancellation in that time.
The ones that I can remember are COVID, and I think there was one other one because of a drought situation, and then this one. Those are the 3.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions?
Any cancellation is too many for me.
Mr. Knack, thank you very much for coming and speaking tonight and providing us the history as well on the fireworks show. So,
Anybody that voted on the prevailing side that would like to bring it up, feel free to do so.
Mr. Knack, thank you so much for your time tonight. And that now concludes unscheduled public comments. I will pass it over to Member Woodward to provide a response.
Ms. Mucklow, your petition will certainly be taken a look at, and that, I mean, it certainly cuts down 6 a.m. to 10 at Centennial, so this is something that I will mention at the next Parks and Rec meeting also. I mean, in addition to council, and get their opinions of that, but it doesn't seem like an unreasonable request to me. Mr. Shoup, thank you for your information, the humor in which it was presented. Certainly appreciate that. I understand from what I understand, which may be incorrect, the person driving the vehicle was at a high rate of speed, a very high rate of speed, and I don't know what kind of roads will help that, but thank you for your presentation. I appreciate it. And Mr. Knack, I know for me, I was for the first time voted against the fireworks because of what I considered to be drought conditions, and if I was going to err, I would prefer to err on the side of safety. Now this afternoon I was looking at the future weather, and all of a sudden I see rain in it, I believe for next week, and I'm thinking, oh boy. But it was my understanding that we had to wait on that, and or we couldn't wait on that because of the planning of it. So although it's up to council, I think we may be without this year. Thank you.
Member Anderson, do you want to add to it?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I wanted to address Mr. Shoup's comments as well, because I think he brings up something very important. 2018, we had someone die in Englewood due to a flood, tragic event that provoked us to spend many, many millions on our stormwater system. We have in the works probably 30 million just to rectify some of the stuff in southwest Englewood to prevent anything like that. On June 4th, this victim of this high-speed car crash died on Broadway at the 4400 block. No less than 2 weeks later, someone else died just a few blocks from my house on that same stretch of Broadway, 6 blocks away from that same car accident. And it was a wake-up call to me that I'm willing to invest this kind of money in our stormwater system, and we have a death trap on South Broadway there. And nobody blinks an eye. Nobody thinks anything of it. We're willing to invest 30 million in stormwater, but the streets won't get us to move. And so I think it was a timely message for us, and a wake-up call that we need to make our streets safe for pedestrians. That's 2 pedestrians in less than 2 weeks killed in my district in Englewood. And we need to do something about it. So thank you for bringing that up tonight.
Thank you, Member Anderson. I'll add to that as well. Mr. Shoup, thank you very much for coming and speaking tonight. There's been other citizens that have shared the meaning of a strode and how we have designed the cities within Englewood and what we need to do about it. I have not read the book, but I would be interested in reading the book, so I may pick up a copy. But I am very interested in having that conversation, not only just on Broadway, but I see people speeding on Logan, on Clarkson, on Downing. I think there's something that needs to be done, especially as a person that cycles quite a bit within the city itself. I notice it, and it's just unfortunate. I definitely want to look into it a little bit further. So I do appreciate you coming tonight, Mr. Shoup. I actually want to do a council request as well, City Manager Lewis. I recall that as part of the off-leash conversations that we had last year, that we were supposed to get an update at some point. I'm not sure if that was actually something that we stated we were going to do after a year of the changes, but if you can just provide any feedback on what we did agree to do 6 months in, 1 year in from the decision that we made late last year. And Mr. Knack, I just want to state, thank you very much for coming and speaking tonight. Honestly, that was a very tough decision, and I knew that this, when people like you came and spoke about our decision, that it was going to be salt to the wound. I did not like it at the time when I made the decision. I understand why I made the decision when I did, and I stand by it. But also, Member Anderson made a very good point that night when we made the decision that we are always going to be dry, and this is going to be a conversation we're going to have year after year. And that's something that I'm going to take to heart when it comes up again next year in terms of whether or not we're going to have fireworks. For this year, I'm okay with the decision, but Member Anderson made a very good point, and I will really think about your words and your history with the fireworks and how it affects people in our city when we cancel the fireworks show. So, but I want to thank you for coming and speaking tonight. With that said, I think we can now move to the next item on the agenda, and that's going to be consent agenda items. And I see, and Member Russell, keep me honest here, but it looks like we're pulling 9C2, 9C3, and 9C7.
Correct.
Did I get those correct? Okay,
Yes,
perfect.
thank you.
If we could get a motion to approve 9A, A1, B1, C1, C4, C5, C6. That is all.
So moved.
Thank you, Member Noonan-Camp. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Can we please vote?
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Noonan-Camp,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to 9C2. Member Russell, you do have a question regarding the contract between the City of Englewood and Cross Purpose. And I believe, do we have Director DeAndre or?
It'll be me doing it.
Ah, there we go. Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. Assistant City Manager Tim Dodd. Looking at the wrong line. Thank you. Go ahead, Member Russell.
I actually have a couple of questions. So, I would like to know who owns 3855 South Broadway?
It's owned by Wellspring Church.
Okay, and, who will be doing the construction work?
Cross Purpose. And if it's okay if I mention Member Russell, I know you had mentioned to City Manager Lewis that you would be pulling this, and so I did send an email just a little while ago during the meeting with this information in detail as well.
Okay, thank you. And can City Council get a list of all of the board members of Cross Purpose?
Absolutely. I emailed it to you, and I'm happy to send it to the council or do it as part of a request, and it's on their website as well.
Okay, and I actually would like this information before we actually vote on it, but I'll leave that up to the discretion of the council.
Thank you, Member Russell. And I guess I'll ask the question, Assistant City Manager, is this an item that is time sensitive in us voting for tonight?
I believe it could certainly wait. The contract has been prepared, it's been reviewed, it's gone through the process. Council has appropriated the money. The other party is interested in having the funds, but there isn't otherwise a deadline. I do have I don't know if it's appropriate for me to read them, but I do have the names of the board members in front of me.
Anyone have an issue with the reading of the names? You said they're on the website, correct?
They are. Yep.
Oh, okay, yeah, if you could just state the names since it is public information.
Sure. Jason Jans, Board President. Sawyer Gordon, Board Chair. Jeff Kremendick, Board Vice Chair. Ken Floyd, Board Member. John Hyde, Board Member. Tiffany Johnson, Board Member. Faith Kissinger, Board Member. Bill Kurtz, Board Member. Ben Warwick, Board Member. And Michaela Warner, Board Member.
Thank you, Assistant City Manager Dodd.
And they're all listed at crosspurpose.org/our-board.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions from council? Seeing none, does anyone want to make a motion to approve 9C2?
I move to approve 9C2.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Could I get a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Any comments? Go ahead, Member Russell.
I would like to make some comments. I am gravely concerned about this because the building is not owned by Cross Purpose. It is owned by Wellspring Church. I find it very troubling that we would spend taxpayer money updating a building owned by a church. And it's very interesting that that church is involved in a lot of things tied in with homelessness. I don't think that any of this has been open or transparent, and I am very concerned about spending taxpayer money. We have a lot of infrastructure problems. ARPA money was meant to build the infrastructure not build a building for somebody or finish a building for somebody. So I will not be supporting this.
Thank you, Member Russell. Anyone else with any comments? I will be in support of this tonight. Obviously, this is one phase of our homelessness plan here in the city of Englewood, which we have been discussing over the past 3 years. I do understand the concerns of Member Russell, but just understanding the many conversations we have had about the Tri-Cities plan, I definitely think that this is a big part of that, and so I'm looking forward to this being hopefully passed tonight. So with that, can we please vote?
Member Anderson.
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward.
Aye.
Member Woodward.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes and 1 nay, the 1 nay being Councilmember Russell.
Thank you, City Clerk. Moving on to 9C3. Member Russell, you had questions regarding the regular meeting of June 27th.
Thank you. My question on this one is, what would happen if we restored the regular scheduled meeting? I mean, it's really troubling that this council passed that we would change the schedule so everybody could have time off. And we already know that July is a month that things need to be done. It is very frustrating to me that this council thinks that we need a vacation. It's not like the schedule for city council wasn't published before. And so now we're having to change another meeting to accommodate that. And I guess I'm a little bit concerned that staff didn't bring this information up when council asked for a vacation. This council does not think through the unintended consequences of their decision. So I personally would be in favor of changing the schedule back to what the normal schedule is rather than changing the meeting on June 27th.
Thank you, Member Russell. City Attorney Niles, is there any comments regarding the question from Member Russell?
Sure, I'll give a little bit of background. By city charter, city council is required to meet 2 times per month in a regular meeting. So we are having 2 regular meetings in July. They're just the last 2 Mondays in July that we designated as the regular meeting. We have had 2 regular meetings in June, but there were some last minute items that were brought up. And so if we want to address any items for action on a night that we were otherwise planning to meet in a study session, which we were next week, council has 2 options: either designate it as a regular meeting where we can put on agenda items like any other regular meeting, or designate it as a special meeting, in which case we're limited to the items that council includes when it designates it as a special meeting. We can't add other items in. So because there were some last minute agenda items, we had requested that council approve by motion, as anticipated by municipal code, to make June 27th a regular meeting, which means you can take votes, have executive session. That's what we propose for next week. Alternatively, if you could choose not to designate it, in which case we could move those items to July. It would delay some things like the stormwater ordinance. We can't close on the loan until the stormwater ordinance rates are approved, and that's on next week's agenda. But we can make it work if council wants to leave that as a study session rather than designate it as a regular meeting. As far as undoing what council did to not have a regular meeting or a study session the first 2 weeks of July, I know quite a bit of council or staff rather is planning to be out of town because a lot of us don't like to miss council meetings. So if we have a week without one, we all plan to travel. But I'm sure we can make it work. It's within council's discretion, but I think staff would probably request that you leave it because I know I, for one, will not be around, but it's within your discretion to do whatever your preference is.
Thank you, City Attorney Niles. Member Russell, did you have anything to add, or?
No. Sorry, forgot to turn off my mic.
Thank you, Member Russell. Mayor Pro Tem.
I don't have an issue with this. One of the reasons why
Point of order. We need to wait for discussion until we've had a motion.
Actually, it's just are you asking a question or?
No.
Oh, okay, yeah, we haven't made a motion yet, so.
Okay.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Can we get a motion to approve 9C3? Sorry about
I
that.
move to approve 9C3.
Thank you, Member Noonenkamp. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes.
Any comments, Mayor Pro Tem? Go ahead.
So as I was saying, I don't have a problem with this. I did not approve this 2-week hiatus because I intended to take time off. I approved it because I was compelled by the arguments that it is very helpful to our staff to be able to schedule time off, particularly during the summertime. I think making a change at this point, as our city attorney pointed out, would cause some unfortunate difficulty for staff. If we want to reconsider how we do this next year, I don't have a problem with that. I'm comfortable with the special meeting. I will be approving it, and I'm also comfortable with the 2-week break in July.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Anyone else? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes and 1 nay, the 1 nay being Councilmember Russell.
Thank you, City Clerk. And now moving on to 9C7. This is the resolution for optimal source order for the purchase of goods and materials agreement with Core and Main for distribution and collection system parts, inventory, equipment, and safety apparatuses. I believe this is Director Van Rye, so Member Russell. Oh, I'm sorry. Hello, Deputy Director
Goodman.
There we go.
Thank you, Mayor.
Good evening. Member Russell.
Thank you. So my question is on the budget, on the contract approval summary page, there's not enough money in Fund 40 on the contract approval. So why are we taking money out of Fund 41 to cover this expense?
So typically the way that we split up distribution and collection funds is we split it 70% in the water fund and 30% in the sewer fund. So the 401605 is the water fund and the 411605 is from the sewer fund.
Okay, so it wasn't just to cover it. Normally you do that.
We do that with personnel, we do that with goods and services and equipment, yes.
So is all of the money that we were spending this year out of that fund accounted for then?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9C7?
Your Honor, I'll move to approve 9C7.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Noonenkamp. Any comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you. No public hearing items for tonight. Moving on to agenda item 11A1. This is Council Bill 32, Little Dry Creek Open Space and Channel Improvements IGA Amendment Number 2. Up with us tonight is Deputy Director of Public Works, Tim Hose. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I'll go over a brief PowerPoint presentation on this item, and then we'll answer any questions you have on this. So let me see if I can get the presentation going here. So yeah, so this is the second amendment to this intergovernmental agreement we have with the Mile High Flood District for this project. As you know, this project's underway. It's been going on for the past few months now. So this second amendment is just for an additional contingency dollar amount to make sure we can finish the project. There's been a few surprises and things that have come up along the way that we want to make sure we have funding to cover. So I'll go over that a little bit here. The couple pictures here of the project as it's being constructed here. This first one looking west from Broadway here, the section between Broadway and Cherokee there. The box at the end is the one that's getting the safety grate put on it there. And then the picture on the right shows the storm sewer pipe that we had to extend into the box there, the area that's going to be covered by the safety grate. And then here's the little summary of the need for the additional funding. So it's $100,000 for the city and for the flood district to cover some couple of unintended expenses. The outfall pipe there that you saw in the last picture, to extend that into the box. We initially were going to just keep that in the bank, but it was going to be exposed and kind of in the way, and we'd have to put some kind of cover on it anyway. So the idea was to go ahead and extend it into the box area and cover it under the other grate. So we just have one big grate covering everything. And there's also the access point to get into the project. That's kind of a hard area to get into out there. So we had to go over to Cherokee and around through the shopping center area, and that caused a little bit of parking lot damage that we're gonna have to replace. So that could add up to a little bit more than we intended. And any funds that we don't use on this contingency will be returned to the city. So the chances are we won't need to use a whole lot of this money. It's just a contingency just in case there's the final cost comes in a little higher, that we have enough to complete the project. So here's a summary of the funding here. This is, as I said, the second amendment to the project there. The first phase, we had 360. That was just to cover the grate and the area around the grates to get the channel restored. The second phase was funding to get us all the way over to Broadway to restore the channel over there. And this third is the $100,000 for this contingency. So it makes the total project budget $2.4 million, and the city pays half of that, and the flood district pays the other half. So with that, we recommend that this bill for an ordinance here to enter into this second amendment to be approved for the Little Dry Creek Plaza drainage and flood control improvements. And I'll answer any questions you have on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Host. Any questions from council? Mayor Pro Tem.
This may not be a question you can answer, but is there a chance that we could run into other unforeseen expenses?
Not at this time. The project's within a month of completion, so we think this is the last little bit here, and it's probably not going to need this whole amount, but the flood district recommended this amount just to make sure we're covered. They said it wouldn't, they don't feel it's going to go over this at all. It'll be well within this number.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 11A1?
I move to approve 11A1.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Could I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Any comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation, Deputy Director. Moving on to 11C1, this is the adoption of the neighborhood map developed by the Historic Preservation Commission. Up tonight is Neighborhood Resources. Oh, no, actually, we got Mr. Crabtree with the Historic Preservation Society and Planner 2, Eric Sampson as well. Mr. Sampson, thank you. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, Council. I'm here tonight. I'm Planner 2 with the Community Development Department, and I'm here to introduce Matt Crabtree, who is the current chair of the Historic Preservation Commission. And he's going to discuss with you tonight the project overview for the neighborhood maps, and also changes from the study session that you had, or that we had with council about a month and a half ago, and then talk about next steps of this project. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Crabtree.
All right, good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. This is kind of an exciting presentation. I hope this is the finalization of this project that we've been working on for a long time. So starting out with the slideshow here, HPC subcommittee started the process of creating a neighborhood map in late 2017. Englewood Neighborhood Map combines, the Englewood Neighborhood Map combines historical subdivision names and modern day places of significance. The map referenced numerous historic maps and other resources. We presented a draft of the Englewood Neighborhood Map to City Council in September of 2021 and again in April of 2022. HPC met multiple times from January 2022 to May 2022 to review and discuss the survey data and public input. HPC made changes to the neighborhood map based upon the feedback from the survey and historical information. HPC presented the revised Englewood Neighborhood Map, Draft 3, to City Council at a study session on April 25th. Council asked HPC to discuss and review the neighborhood names and names of Leland Heights and Belle Isle. Draft 4 changes. Leland Heights neighborhood was, the name was changed to Clayton. That was actually really good input, so I appreciate that, Mayor Pro Tem. Belle Isle spelling was changed to Belle Isle, different spelling, to accurately reflect Thomas Belle Isle's history in that area. I'm going to go off script here a little bit and say that there's also another naming of this used nearby the reservoir that's just adjacent to the waste, or to the Allen treatment plant. That reservoir is Belle Isle Reservoir. So it further helps support the significance of this name in that area. And Thomas Belle Isle was one of the original property owners in that part of town. So the northern boundary of Forest Hill was changed to Yale Avenue. The map presented to City Council on April 25th had the northern boundary incorrect. Here's an example of draft 3 to draft 4. As you can see, the changes Leland Heights to Clayton, and the changes to Belle Isle in the corner there. Total neighborhood map changes, number of neighborhoods. Draft 2 had 36 neighborhoods. Draft 3 had 40 neighborhoods. Changes made to draft 2 and 3, neighborhood boundary changes 19, neighborhood name changes 10, additional neighborhoods 4. Changes made to draft 3 and 4, neighborhood boundary changes 1, and neighborhood name changes 2. Neighborhood map adoption. Implementing a citywide neighborhood map will help Englewood residents identify where they live in the city, strengthen our community, and preserve the city's diverse population. Next steps, formalize and adopt the official Englewood neighborhood map. Communications will launch a marketing campaign to encourage residents to identify which neighborhood they live in, educate the community on the history of each neighborhood, identify neighborhoods to install neighborhood signage, and of course assist in organization of neighborhood groups and connect with residents. I believe that's the end of the slide. The only other thing I'd like to, make sure that's kind of remembered during this process is there is a long history in the city with subdivisions, and largely this map was based upon some of the original subdivision names. Those will not change, right? Those are legal, those are part of deeds. Some of the feedback that we received in the community was, wait a second, my deed says this. Well, this is on top of that. If you look at the Arapahoe County website, there isn't a clear definition of neighborhood right now. So this is a new definition of an area that is called neighborhood. And I would hope that Arapahoe County would adopt these names and put those on the county record alongside with the subdivision names. So, any questions?
Thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Crabtree. Any questions for Mr. Crabtree from council? Member Russell.
I'd just like to make a comment. I want to thank the Historic Preservation Commission for working so hard on this project, and I think it's amazing. So thank you.
Any questions from council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 11C1?
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Russell. Any comments? We'll start with Member Newton-Camp. We'll go Member Newton-Camp, we'll just come down.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to also echo those same things. I'm so thrilled to see this project come to completion. Thank you for the multiple drafts. I know we were really close last time, but really thrilled to see this come through. And again, I think this project is such a powerful tool for connecting the citizens who have been in this community for several decades and those who have been here for only a couple of years, to connect them to the history that we have, and that we can have shared identity and shared meaning, shared belonging. It's very exciting. Thrilled to be a member of the Romans Park neighborhood, and thanks for all your work.
Thank you, Member Newton-Camp. Member Woodward.
No, I just want to acknowledge what Member Russell said in Newnan-Camp. And as I had mentioned to you at the break, a lot of people really got engaged in this. And as far as community involvement, you could actually see it in some of the places where the maps were. For example, Malley Center, where I hang out. But it's great, and kudos to the Historic Society for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Mayor Pro Tem.
5 years, Mr. Crabtree. 5 years. And we're in
It's been a while.
Thank you for your work. I also want to thank you. I know that council largely deferred to the commission in changing the name of my neighborhood, but I can't overemphasize how much more comfortable I am living in Clayton neighborhood. So I appreciate that change, and I'm happy to approve this map tonight. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, City Manager Lewis.
Thank you. I echo those thanks, and also want to just point out Member Questo was also a pretty big part in this when he was on the commission, faithful member, as well as previous members. But I want to call out staff, because staff has done a tremendous amount of work in helping provide mapping services, public outreach campaigns. The communications team and Madeline has done great work. The planning staff has done a lot of work as well. So thank you to all.
Yep. And Chair Crabtree, thank you very much for all the work on this, to not only yourself and your commission, but also the work of staff. This is great, and just providing me like a history of Englewood, not knowing what Leland Heights was prior to these conversations is great. Don't be surprised, Mayor Pro Tem Ward, if I find a placard and still place "Welcome to Leland Heights" in your yard. It still may happen. So with that, no additional comments. Can we please vote?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Crabtree. Moving on to 11C2, Professional Services Agreement for the Allen Water Treatment Plant. Here tonight we have Director Peter Van Rye and just Director Peter Van Rye.
Just me tonight, again. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is a request for a contract with a consultant to help us further analyze the Allen Treatment Plant and further identify projects and prioritize those projects for the treatment plant. In 2020, we did a master plan. We did a really high-level master plan of the entire system. So that's all aspects of the system. If you recall, one of the things that I talked about as out of the results of that was our filter interface panel. The parts in it were no longer supported because they're circa 1990, so we had to look on eBay for parts. That project's done. So we have that. It's all modernized. It's one of those it was one of those critical projects that we actually did follow through and have now modernized that and really updated our SCADA systems, things like that. So we have done projects that came out of the master plan, and we're further executing things that we know based on our knowledge of the plan of things that need to be fixed and modernized. As we move forward, what this scope does is it looks beyond just that 50,000 foot level and gets down into more detail of the systems and really looks at the condition of the individual systems and looks at ways to optimize the plant as well. So we're looking at both the optimization of the process and the condition assessment of the components of the process on a more granular level, down to the level of individual motor control centers and pumps and motors and things like that. That's what this will look at. One of the other key things out of this project is to really help identify those key component areas that are critical points of failure. So we've done some analysis of single point of failure. So a single point of failure is if we lose a particular part, then we have a real hard time with the plant operation. And so we're really looking at where are those vulnerabilities to ensure that we have spare parts on the shelf. And so if something has a lead time of 6 weeks, we have a spare part on the shelf, so we're only waiting a day to get it installed as opposed to 6 weeks for it to get installed. So all of that is helping us to add resiliency to the plant. This project just goes into more detail specific to the Allen plant site itself. What we'll get as a project deliverable is a condition assessment, a really comprehensive look at the plant as a whole, which will go into our asset management database and will inform our future capital planning for the Allen plant as a whole. We went through a competitive bidding process, had 7 consulting firms bid on the project, and ultimately selected Brown and Caldwell. They had the best approach to balancing the condition assessment piece along with the process optimization piece. They have relevant experience, and they actually had a very competitive price. Project schedule is we're now at the point of requesting moving forward, council approval to move forward, and then ideally we'll have a final 10-year CIP by first quarter of next year, and that'll inform next year's budget process, and we'll have some more detail in that capital planning process. And with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you, Director. Any questions for Director Van Rye? I see none. Can I get a motion to approve 11C2?
I'll move to approve 11C2.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Noonan-Camp. Any comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Noonan-Camp,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sia.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you. Director Van Rye, you're up. You stay up there for a contract for construction for sanitary sewer pipeline rehab construction services.
I'm gonna switch out with Deputy Director Goodman again. So
Deputy
she's
Director.
coming up right now.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You guys tricked me. Go ahead.
We're not doing this on purpose, I swear. So I will be presenting on the sanitary sewer pipe rehabilitation project this evening. Here are a few snapshots of what our sanitary sewer looks like on the inside. The CCTV, the closed circuit television inspection that goes through, identifies defects in the pipe. The slide on the left is a typical cured in place pipe liner that goes into an existing hose pipe. This is a mostly trenchless technology that is used, so you do not have to dig up the sanitary sewer to install this. It's inserted in a manhole and goes to the next manhole. The hose pipe actually can completely deteriorate. The liner is actually designed so that it is a purely structural liner. You see the typical bid items next to that picture where we show the 8-inch sewer, digging some point repairs, the extended pipe trimming, tap and repair, and then the liner itself. After the liner is installed, there is a camera that goes in and actually will take out little coupons for where the sanitary sewer services are located, so those do not have to be dug up either. The invitation to bid was released in February 2022. We had 2 bidders that bid on the project. Granite Inliner was ultimately selected for their expertise and also for their low bid of $415,555.55. With that, I'll entertain any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Any questions? Member Russell.
Thank you. Does the liner actually diminish the volume that can flow through the pipe?
That is a great question. Technically, there is a thickness to it, so it does actually decrease the diameter of the pipe, but because it is a smoother pipe and it increases the ease which with wastewater goes through, it's actually a negligible effect. So you gain more by getting a smoother pipe than you do by getting a little tiny bit of reduction in diameter.
So does it lengthen the amount of time before we would have to actually dig up the pipes and replace them?
Yes, so it's basically like installing a brand new pipe. So the hose pipe can completely deteriorate. It is a full brand new pipe that you're installing basically.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Member Woodward.
Is this something then that to replace, let's say, 75 years down the road when this one starts to fail, can you do the same thing again?
That is a great question. I don't know if you can line a lined pipe. I would imagine that you could. I'm not aware of anybody doing that.
Okay. Hasn't been around that long, huh?
I want to say, so let's see, I don't want to date myself or anything, but this technology has been around for quite some time. 15 or so years ago, whenever I was a consulting engineer, it was a bit of a new-ish technology, so I don't think we've actually gotten to the useful end of a CIPP pipe yet.
Okay. And this is the same concept that they're using some places on sewer lines replacement going from the alley up to the house, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Member Woodward. No other questions? With that, can I get a motion to approve 11C3?
I'll move 11C3.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Could I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Noonan-Camp,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sia.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you, Deputy Director.
Thank you.
And now that takes us to agenda item 12, Mayor's Choice. Actually, I guess I will bring up the appointment of the opioid regional council representative. And keep me honest here, City Attorney Niles, but we do have to designate an elected official. Actually, it doesn't even have to be an elected official, but for the county, and I guess City Attorney Niles, City Attorney Niles, do you want to go ahead and just add something to this?
Certainly, I'd be happy to. It is our understanding that other government entities are appointing elected officials to serve on this regional council. And we need to actually decide on 3 appointments. One is our own city representative. One is a voting representative to represent the cities of Littleton, Sheridan, and Englewood that we appoint all together. And then the other is an alternate to serve as the voting representative if the voting representative is not present. We don't have to appoint an alternate, but we have 3 cities that are jointly participating, and among the 3, we would have 3 appointments. So it does make sense, perhaps, for each city to designate one, and then we decide amongst ourselves who will be the voting, who will be the alternate, and who will be the non-voting. These are terms for 2 years, according to the regional IGA. So if someone is appointed as the voting member for 2 years, then perhaps we could rearrange the people for terms after that. That's not a conversation for today, but just something to keep in mind.
Thank you, City Attorney. And actually, I haven't had a chance to speak to the mayor of Littleton, but I did speak to the mayor of Sheridan. She did state that just based off of their schedules, they may actually be appointing someone that's not an elected official. They haven't made that decision just yet, but just based on schedules and not knowing any timing, it may be someone from city staff. So I guess the discussion tonight, are we looking to just amongst ourselves, or if anybody is interested in serving on this board, are there any suggestions? Member Anderson.
I have some interest in this because I think this could be a source of funds for implementing our homelessness action plan and serving on the Tri-Counties, the Tri-Cities homelessness action, whatever we call ourselves, homeless policy group. I think it might be, but I'm concerned. What do we know about how often these meetings are and when they might be? That's my major hang up.
Understandably, but unfortunately, I don't have any information on that. All I know is they want to start meeting sometime in July, which is why I keep bringing this up. We need to appoint somebody. But I don't have any information on when exactly. There will be quite a bit of activity. I anticipate July, August, September, because they have to approve a 2-year plan of action before they can receive any of the settlement money.
Anything to go ahead, Member Anderson?
Yeah, that sounds very difficult to have a lot of activity on another committee throughout the summer. I have a lot going on, but yeah, maybe if someone else, I would defer if someone else wants to do it, but I might consider. I guess we gotta decide.
Right.
So I don't know. How do other people feel?
Right. Member Noonekamp.
I have a clarifying question. If we appoint an elected official, and let's say it's Member Anderson and he cannot make a certain meeting, can a staff member fill in as an alternate in the city position?
Yes, I think they are going to keep the meetings open to other staff members to attend. And the city is designated appointee is not a voting member unless all 3 together designate them as the voting member. So yes, I think that would probably be fine. And then of course the staff member, whoever that may be, I'm pointing to myself, but it could certainly be the city manager, could then report back to the appointed designee.
Okay, that's helpful if that provides any clarity for Member Anderson.
Thank you, Member Noonekamp. Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, I just recently left Dr. Cog, as we all know. So I have 2 boards that I currently serve on right now, Budget Advisory Committee and Urban Renewal Authority, which hardly ever meets. Generally once a year. Budget Advisory Committee is monthly, so I could probably make the time to do this if we choose to add an elected official. I'm comfortable with that.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. In terms of bandwidth, I don't have the time. I would love to serve on this, but I just think just knowing that there's going to be 3 months of a lot of work potentially, and just not knowing when they're going to meet, afternoons are really bad for me. So I'd love to serve, but I just wouldn't be able to guarantee that I can make that commitment work. So I would be happy with either Member Anderson or Mayor Pro Tem. Since Mayor Pro Tem seems to have some open time, I would be happy with that. But Member Anderson?
Yeah, I would defer to Mayor Pro Tem. I think he'll do a good job advocating for the city, and if we have some interest from council in, directing the money to, if we can direct some of that towards the homelessness action plan, I think that is one of the allowable uses for the funds. So I would hope that we could move that direction, and I feel the same way. I'm not sure if there's a lot of meetings. I feel like I would probably end up missing quite a few. So
Thank you, Member Anderson. Anyone in disagreement with having Mayor Pro Tem as our representative on the opioid council? I don't see any, so congratulations, Mayor Pro Tem. You won.
To quote Homer Simpson, default, default, default.
And then one other item for me on Mayor's Choice. As most of you are aware, based off of just how I was asking staff to kind of stay on the timeline tonight for study session, I've grown a little bit concerned in terms of just our council meetings our study session items on council meeting nights going past 7 o'clock. So I started talking to City Manager Lewis about this, and also the city attorney. Turns out that there actually is nothing within council policy that states that we need to have a study session during the nights of a city council meeting. And so one of the items that I'm like for this city council to consider is going back to study sessions being on their own Monday night, city council meetings being on their first and third meetings of the night, and just try to keep it simple for our citizens so they know if they are going to come and speak to a public hearing or just public comment, that there's a specific night for it. So that's something that I would like for us to consider and see if you are open to that. The one issue that I can see happening is just we do have a lot of study session items that come up. So it may mean that our study session evenings may go a little bit longer. There's also probably other avenues that we can explore in terms of just having the items as part of the agenda, being a having a presentation, but us voting on it that same night. I could see some difficulties with that for certain items. It may be something that we could just table until the next meeting, but having that presentation as part of the council meeting night. But overall, I do see the benefit of just having study sessions on separate nights and council meetings or council meetings on its own night. So just wanted to hear any feedback from council if this is something that they would like to explore. Member Anderson, I saw your light first, so I'll leave it to you.
thank you, Mayor. I like the idea. I'm concerned about execution in that I'm afraid our meetings on the study session nights are going to get long because we consistently fill up study session nights and have stuff left over. So I don't know if that means we just go longer on the study session nights or what. It seems like it's been forever because it was pre-COVID, but pre-COVID what we would do is have study sessions next door, and we always ended pretty hard, 5 till 7 to get over here and get the next meeting started, or sometimes maybe went a few minutes over if we're trying to wrap something up. But I think if we could just exercise a little more discipline on the time limits like we did tonight, that would prevent having super long nights, and just make it a matter of discipline that we're going to end those study session topics and schedule them such that they can be things that can be completed within that time, or table them for further discussion if we can't finish them if the discussion goes long. But I don't know, that was kind of my feeling. I don't want to go late nights on study session nights if we can avoid it.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Member Noonan-Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for bringing this up. This is something that I've been concerned about as well. And I think a good example is a few weeks ago, we had several study session items which forced public comment to not start until 8:30 p.m. So we had citizens waiting for 2.5 hours to address council. Some had to leave because they had children and they weren't able to wait that long. And I actually spoke with a citizen who spoke that evening who gave me some feedback, and they said, it feels like you're trying to make us leave, like you're trying to wait us out, you don't want to hear from us. And I don't think that any of us want to be sending that message to the public. And if we want to encourage citizen engagement and serve the citizens, I really believe that public comment has to be easily accessible to the public, especially people who maybe find it difficult to be here for several hours, maybe single parents, people who have jobs. And so the point is well taken that, you know, where there's a concern about study sessions going long. My thought is I would rather us stay late than make citizens stay late if I had my choice. And I think that's the job that we're here to do. And but I think, you know, we can say to the greatest extent possible. Maybe there will be times that we have to have a study session on a regular night, but to the greatest extent possible, I would agree with the mayor and prefer to have them two separate and predictability for citizens.
Thank you, Member Newcamp. So you prefer my option if, okay, we got the votes. Member Woodward.
Yeah, I think we've had study sessions during both on or off council meetings nights for years and years and years and many years. And I think it's a matter of planning on that night of and trying to limit for that council night. So I'd be in favor of continuing what we're doing and working more on the agenda for the council's for the study session night that is the same as a council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Member Russell.
Thank you. I actually agree with something that Councilmember Anderson brought up, and that is perhaps going back to the way that we did it before, where there are two separate meetings. And I know that what the original intent was only to spend 1 hour on study session topics when on city council nights. But we would meet in their totally separate meeting and then come in here only for the city council meeting. Though I guess I'm okay with doing both, but I do think they ought to be separate. The other thing that I think, if we decide that we're only going to do city council meetings on the first and third Mondays, then I think we need to start at 7 o'clock. I think that, you know, a lot of people do have jobs and they can't get here at 6 o'clock, but 7 o'clock would be open. I agree. I've been concerned all along about meeting at 7 o'clock sharp so that when the public knows that if they're here and then they don't have to wait forever. So either way, but I think we could do both, but I'd like to see them separate.
Thank you, Member Russell. Mayor Pro Tem, do you want to weigh in?
I think the concerns about citizens not being able to predict our meeting times are very valid. And whatever adjustment we need to make, whether that's something we make in the weekly mayor-manager meetings or if we're changing the structure, I'm fine, but I would like to honor those concerns. I think it's come up, as Member Newdenkamp pointed out, you know, 2.5 hours is a long time to wait to address your elected officials, particularly when the posted meeting time is different. So I'm open to suggestions. If we go back to the old procedure where we can have study sessions prior to the council meeting and we just hold those to an hour hard and get whatever business done in that time that we can, I'm fine with that. If we want to go, my big concern is late nights. We do not do our best work after 10 p.m. And I want to make sure that when we're on this dais, when we're assembled as a group to do the business of the people, we do our best work. In as much as we can avoid late nights. If we can shoehorn some things in before the council session, that's fine, but I think the big priority here is to try to make our meetings predictable for our residents.
I am okay with that. Anything to add, Member
Yeah,
Anderson?
I just wanted to add one more thing. If the choice is between making citizens wait and making us stay up late, obviously, you know, we should stay up late. But I don't think that's the situation here. The situation is we had a couple of meetings where we planned to go really long for a study session before a council meeting. That was in the schedule. We knew it was going to go long. That's a matter of discipline and planning. And we discovered that doesn't work. It doesn't work for the citizens, and it's not good for us. This worked. I went to many council meetings between 2015 and 2019 before I was on city council, and never once did I have to wait for more than 5 or 10 minutes after 7 before a council meeting started. They always kept those study session periods to an hour. It was well done, well planned. There's no reason we can't do that. It's been done for years. I don't want to have late study session nights. We just need to plan the meetings better. So that's what I intended to say. Is I totally agree. If we have to make citizens, obviously we're the ones should pay the price for that, but we don't have to do that.
No, I thank you very much for all the feedback. Let's keep the status quo as is. Mayor Pro Tem and I will do a better job of we will hold the line in terms of the scheduling and make sure that these meetings start at 7. I actually do agree with Member Anderson and Member Russell. I do like the delineation between having study session in there and council meetings in here. So I like to go back to that just because it may provide a little bit of clarity for our citizens when they do walk into the council chambers. This is a council meeting and not necessarily a study session. So I saw City Clerk, you're putting your hands up, so there may be something to add, but go ahead.
With all of our new technology and the way that we conduct meetings and essentially the production of live stream and different rooms, I do want you to consider the amount of work that it would take to do the 2 different rooms. We would have to pad in a lot of time in between the meetings just to switch gears, and so just something to think about if we're going to do it in 2 different rooms. There's a lot of logistics now that happen technology-wise that would need to be considered to pull that off.
So City Clerk, can you provide us can I make a council request to just get information on what that looks like, especially since we have a couple weeks off coming up? What I need to understand is, I guess one of the questions I have is, why can't we just keep one single feed going and move from there to here? You know what I mean? It's just keep the same recording, same.
I'm not the technical person,
no, I know
but
exactly,
we'll
but that would be one of the
definitely provide
questions.
all those details. I
Yeah.
just think there's a lot more logistics than the way we used to run meetings.
Right, okay,
so.
that's one thing that I would want to understand, but as of what I heard tonight, it does sound that we want to keep the status quo, and we'll just do a better job of keeping the line in terms of just starting the regular meeting at 7 o'clock. But Member Noonekamp?
Yeah, I just have one other suggestion on this topic. And my motivation here is to make our meetings as accessible to the public as possible, especially folks maybe who have never spoken before, who maybe feel intimidated by this process. How do we make this an easy experience for them? And I wonder if there's even something we could put in our agenda just to more clearly notate to folks what time they should be here if they're giving public comment. I know a few weeks ago when we did go long, I don't think it was clearly noted that we would start public comment at 7. And I know tonight it says that the study session will go till 7, but maybe something under recognition of public comment saying that the meeting will start at 7. I'm not sure. I'm open to suggestions, but if you're new to this process, you look and you see tonight it starts at 5:30 and you come, it might not be clear when you're supposed to arrive. And so just maybe there's an agenda for a study session and an agenda for the meeting. But right now, I think it's confusing for citizens, in my opinion.
Thank you, Member Noonekamp. Member Anderson?
Yeah, I was just going to say, they're 2 separate, I think they should be treated as 2 separate meetings with 2 separate agendas. I would prefer to be in the other room, but it's not that, I don't think it's not a make it or break it deal to me if there's a logistic problem with it, but I do think separating the agendas solves a lot of those problems.
No, that sounds good. Any other comments? I thought I had something else for Mayor's Choice tonight, but I can't think of what it was, so I will leave it at that. So council members' choice, anyone have anything tonight? Member Woodward?
Yes, I know a few of us are going to CML conference tomorrow. I'm just wondering, I've signed up for the business meeting. Has anybody else in council signed up for that? That's when we vote for the new board, basically, among other things.
Anyone want to jump in on their schedule?
I think I'm in that meeting, but I'd have to check my itinerary. But I think that's one of the meetings that I signed up for.
Okay.
Okay, well, where my question is somebody's got to vote. I mean, hopefully Englewood will vote. I will do it. I've signed up. I will do it if nobody else has. I mean, so when I go in there tomorrow, somebody's going to get the credentials.
You really want the credentials, don't you, Member Woodward? Just say it if you want the credentials.
I did it. I think it was 8 years that I voted. So,
Member Woodward, I'd be fine with you taking the lead on the vote, unless anybody says otherwise. So I see no complaints on our side.
okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Member Anderson, your light's on.
Council members' choice.
Yeah, you're on council member's choice, yeah. Your turn.
Thank you, Mayor. We had our first service day of the year, Be a Tool Service Day, and I just wanted to thank everybody. It was a tremendous day. We worked on 5 homes, had about 50 volunteers, so first of all, thank you to the many volunteers who came out, and then secondly, thank you to staff. We had help from the communications department and neighborhood resources. Madeline did a lot of work in advance, and then the intern Trista came on Saturday and helped us get kicked off, and then Parks went around and chipped up branches today, I believe, and got all of those taken care of. And so it's a tremendous effort from city staff working with the community and the volunteer base and churches and other financial supporters to make this day happen. And I'm just super thankful to see everybody working together on it. And City Manager Lewis also came out and served as well and had a great project. So thank you as well, and everyone who volunteered.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Member Russell.
Thank you. So, I actually have a question. Actually, I didn't send any emails last week to staff. My computer wasn't working, and then it was in the shop from Thursday till today, so I got that fixed. But City Attorney, were you aware that the First Amendment auditors were at Bellevue Park?
No, I was not.
And so I guess the young lady who drives the train was very intimidated. And I mean, I think when the First Amendment auditors came here before, they were really setting up the city for lawsuits. So I just wondered if anybody was aware of that.
I don't know if other city staff was, but I do know that we have provided some extensive training to staff on First Amendment auditors. And for people that may be watching, these are people that exercise their First Amendment rights and come into city facilities and make sure that we know what the law is as well, because First Amendment gives people the freedom of speech, of course. So Communications did recently put out a video for our city staff to be able to watch to kind of guide them through this process. In general, we take the position that we as city staff are here to help our citizens, and we will do everything we can to help anyone that needs our assistance. But of course, if somebody feels intimidated or they fear for their safety, they should call our police department. They're very well trained, very professional, and they know the appropriate way to handle people, especially if they're being loud or confrontational. So I have encouraged city staff that when in doubt or they're not sure what to do, they can always call our police department because they are here to protect and serve.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And then the one other thing I've been going to address for a while, but the meetings have been going kind of late. And And I've been invited to the case meeting 3 different times. And I would like to respond to that here for a couple of reasons. And so I'm just going to read a statement that I wrote out. It is very important to me to speak with my constituents from all different backgrounds and beliefs. However, it is also very important that people are open and transparent about their intentions. Case has been neither open nor transparent. When you were asked for a list of members, you failed to provide one. Also, I have received 3 emails from Sustainable Englewood and was never given the courtesy of who was sending the email. On several occasions, according to your own meeting notes, your members refer to your group as a lobbying organization. You are a special interest group that has a political agenda, not only in Englewood, but across the Denver metro area and the state. Not only do you not identify who is speaking in your email, your meetings are not posted and are not open to the public. All organizations have a right to be heard, but the people in the community also have a right to know who is speaking to their elected officials and city staff on behalf of any organization or political agenda. Even Case did an open records request to see who I was talking to. Please stop the double standard. Case has unduly influenced city staff both on the single hauler trash issue and in direction for the Sustainability Commission. Until Case becomes more open and transparent, I would urge City Council and city staff members to limit input from Case in the best interests of all citizens in the city of Englewood. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Mayor Pro Tem.
Just one item. I think this might be appropriate for an executive session, but I would like to discuss the security prior to our meetings here, our security procedures. So I don't know if the rest of the body has any interest in having that discussion, but if we do, I believe that would fall under our executive session privilege.
Sure, Mayor Pro Tem. So I guess City Attorney Niles, do we need any more information in terms of just agreeing to doing this? It just sounds like you just need majority in terms of just setting this up as a executive session, correct?
Well, I would need consensus for the
Right.
discussion, and then we
Right.
could
Yeah.
proceed in the executive session.
Correct,
method, but-
yeah.
We certainly could to discuss security measures, or as attorney-client privilege. I know I've given some opinions regarding the law on that as well.
Okay. Member Anderson.
I would be interested in having that discussion.
Okay. Member Woodward.
I would also.
I would
Member Russell,
also.
sorry. Should have said your name. I'm just looking at you. Well, there's a consensus. I would be open to having that conversation as well. So we'll have you work with the City
We'll
Attorney
just
Niles.
add it to the list of items for the next mayor
Yep.
manager to get it on the schedule.
Perfect. Anyone else? Council member's choice? Seeing none, now we move to City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things. First of all, we do have an executive session scheduled for next week, so if it's okay with you, we could just add this topic. Secondly, I wanted to let you know, because of the public comment that we had tonight, I checked with the Parks Department with regard to where our fireworks operators come from. And we do work with a company in Oklahoma that does bring a team, but the Parks Department does now think that maybe they use some local volunteers or even paid, staff members that come locally. We were not aware of that until tonight, but just wanted to let you know that our contacts are all in Oklahoma that we work with on that. And then third and finally, just wanted to get some clarification from council as the city attorney's office and my office work to finalize the ballot questions, not only related to charter, but also the potential tax ballot question. So if Stephanie, I'm a clerk, Carlisle, if you can advance to the next slide. So as you know, at the last meeting, when we discussed this, the staff was recommending a 0.2 sales tax for street and road maintenance, a 0.10 sales tax for alternate policing related to homelessness, mental health, and addiction services. We got some feedback from that, namely that we could potentially look, instead of doing the alternate policing, that we just go with the staffing proposal. As you know, on the question that we asked residents in the survey, we had that as two different options, the two different policing questions for the residents to choose from. This one just pulled a little bit higher, but it wasn't substantial. So if council would like to ask an actual police staffing question at somewhere around that same rate, that would pay for the police staff that were requested by the police chief, because you already admitted your budget to put one desk officer into the budget, and we do anticipate that we could fund at least one more of those. Moving to the next slide, we did have some recommendations. As you may remember, we got the survey results on your agenda very quickly before the leadership team even had a chance to discuss. When we did discuss, we talked about a number of ballot questions in other cities that had combined their questions and then listed out the uses of those questions. So looking at that as precedent, that we are not bound by that. The Communications Department was concerned that it might be challenging to conduct two different campaigns related to two ballot items, as opposed to just combining those. And of course, these are public information campaigns that would give both the pros and cons of doing this as required by state law. And then we also thought that there are going to be a lot of questions on the ballot in November, and we were a little bit worried about voter confusion, some fatigue maybe with all the different charter questions plus the tax questions. So we are recommending that we combine those. Certainly these are just recommendations. We're not married to any of those, but as written here, it would be a 0.3 cent, so a third of a penny on our 3.5% sales tax rate. 2.2 for street and roads, 0.1 for alternate policing. The only other thing that I would mention is that should we do this as a staff, as staffing, that's pretty uncommon, and I would want to check the legality of certain positions would be funded by that tax. We could potentially make it very broad and open-ended, which would provide the most flexibility. But let's say we go into a severe recession. Would the voters have approved people in terms like position numbers within the organization that we could not, last hired, first fired kind of thing? So we want to check the legality of that. It would be a little more, it's less typical to fund staff with a tax. It's more typical to fund programs and services, in addition to the fact that this one pulled a bit better. But either way, because we have these alternate policing services, if this is the route we go, that would free up money to provide staffing resources in the department, as this would provide a dedicated funding source for these services. So again, staff is open completely to council's direction on this, but this was the discussion we had at leadership team. Glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, City Manager Lewis. Any questions? Member Russell?
I had a similar question to what you just suggested. So if this is approved, we have operated ever since I've been on council for police officers short. So if this is approved, what happens to that money? Can we legally operate 4 police officers short if we do this process?
Thank you for the question, Member Russell. I think that's in part of the reasoning that we're suggesting that we fund programs and services is because there would be some question. I think it would be perfectly legal for us to continue to recruit for those and those to be vacant. I don't think there would be any problem with that. But if you were, approving or asking the voters to approve specific additional positions on top of our already our 78 officer count, plus some of those civilian positions, those were the ones the question is, could we only fund those additional police staffing positions? And, we would probably still have, as we always do in police and every other department, vacancies that are occurring throughout the year. And I don't think that we would be in violation of the ballot question if those vacancies occurred. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
So maybe I wasn't clear on this, but the question regarding police that the poll results most clearly indicated the voters would be willing to pass was the 0.18% sales tax increase to fund police and municipal court needs. That's how I'm reading the poll, and that's what I would be supporting in this case. And I think that's classified as alternative policing justice, 0.18%. But police officers were inclusive of that. It also covered the alternative justice and restorative justice programs.
Great point, Mayor Pro Tem. Yes, you may notice that in the language that's been finalized, the term restorative justice has been taken out. I felt like staff was given direction that this really needed a focus on policing after we got the survey results. So we did take restorative justice. That's also the reason why the dollar amount went down. Both the fact that we took the restorative justice program out, that's about $100,000. We took that out, and we took into consideration you had already funded the desk officer in the budget amendment. So that 0.18 now can become 0.1. So that's why this number is different in a lower amount. So we think we're still achieving the same things that council wanted, but you've already now funded a position, and we felt like you were focusing on policing rather than municipal court, which is where restorative justice resides.
Anything to add, Mayor Pro Tem?
I think I'm still most comfortable with the ask equivalent to what the survey was. The 0.18. My concern here is that when we adjust down to 0.1, and we potentially don't get the result that we're anticipating by asking the voters for more money, if they give us the money, then we have a sort of a built-in reason why we didn't get that result, which is, well, we didn't get as much money as we said we would need, and so we were only able to do so much. And I want to make sure, I kind of want to make this ironclad. If you give us this money, we can do this, and we anticipate that that will solve this problem. And then if the problem doesn't get solved, we no longer have a financial or fiscal issue. We have a policy issue, because we told the voters that we needed this much money to solve the problem, and the problem didn't get solved. We know that more money is not going to be the solution. So now we have to look at what we need to change policy-wise or administratively. I just don't want to ask the voters for something where we can build in an excuse as to why we didn't succeed at the goal that we told them we intended to achieve with the money. So that's my concern with the shave to 0.10, is that we would be missing some opportunity to solve some additional problems.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Anderson.
On the issue of how we word it, is there any reason we couldn't kind of take a hybrid approach and not refer to specific positions, but to fund increased police presence and alternative policing strategies or something like that gives us a lot of flexibility in how we spend the money, but communicates clearly to the voters that we're going to be putting more people on the streets from both, potentially both sides of it. Is that a valid approach, or is that straying too far from the survey language that we've collected to be less confident in how it will fare with the voters?
Thank you, Member Anderson. I appreciate the questions related to the ballot. To the public survey that we did. But I want to mention there was no magic to the survey. There was a lot of author's discretion that the surveyor and myself, that went into that. There was not a lot of magic other than the dollar amounts. We were trying to reflect the dollar amounts. But since then, some conditions have changed. What I would say is that yes, we could make that more general to police services, which could include restorative, et cetera. My concern, and I had a discussion Friday after work with the city attorney about the fact that if we say increased police services, we are only funding money above what police is already getting. Now, I think that that's the point. What we liked about funding existing programs and services is that those are services that we've added over the last 5 years and that have taken away from other policing services. So if we provided a dedicated funding source for those, it frees up money for other policing needs that the department has. So that's kind of what we were thinking. But so I think the answer is yes, and I'd be a little bit nervous about it.
Member Russell.
Thank you. I have another question, because when we were going through the budget and all the things that the police have put in the budget, what concerns me a great deal is this ballot is going to come forward at the same time. Really, the budget will already have been voted on before this comes forward. If the economy totally collapses, people may vote no. And if that happens, then what are we going to do? I mean, because by that time, it'll be too late to change the budget because it will have already been voted on.
I think you raise a good point about the difficulty of budgeting this year for additional police services. You heard the presentation from police tonight with their 6 officer requests. Now 1 desk officer request instead of 2 because you've already funded 1, and then the dispatch supervisor position. So the tricky part is all of those positions could be funded by the tax, either by asking, would you vote for point 1 for additional positions, or would you vote for point 1 to fund our existing alternate policing services? The difficulty is, should we put those in the budget as placeholders and then hope for the best that the voters pass it? But we definitely will have to dip into reserves if we wanted to, for the 2023 budget, if we put all of those in there currently, because there's simply not enough money for all the enhancements that you're going to be hearing over the next couple of weeks. So that probably doesn't exactly answer your question, but it does make budgeting very tricky, because we want to fund at least, I would like to fund or propose to you to fund, at least 2 officers in this budget that's coming up, if we can afford it. Or maybe 1 of the desk officers and 1 police officer. But yeah, I don't know exactly how to approach that. We'll have to talk about that more.
Member Woodward?
Yeah, I'm just looking at this. I have a real strong feeling about having specific things like related to homelessness, mental health, and addiction services. What if we get out of the addiction services? I mean, something happens where maybe people aren't doing drugs anymore. I think I had mentioned to Sean earlier today, after the Depression in the 30s and stuff, there were lots and lots of homeless. You heard hobos and that, riding the rails, all going to California and stuff like that. Things change, and all of a sudden, when the homelessness may not be a problem forever, how do we stop this 0.10%? How do we decrease the taxes? And so I'm suggesting that we make some more, the 0.10 sales tax for additional services and policing resource services, or something like that. I mean, something more general that fits into policing.
I think some of the limitations you're mentioning about these specific items those are the same arguments that I'm making about the staffing, and really, we're both right in that, this ballot language definitely ties you to what that can be spent on. I think with regard to mental health and addiction services, I think we're that's the future. And I think cities and towns and frankly states, counties are moving towards the recognition that we've got to do more, particularly in those areas. And I think as we understand mental health better, I don't think that those go away. I hope we can have a more national and state approach to homelessness. And so certainly I think that's a pretty legitimate concern, that there might be, statewide or national kind of movement on that, probably less likely on the national side. But either way we go, we're definitely limited by the language. So your point's well taken. I'm not sure what the answer is.
Member Noonekamp.
Yeah, on the safety question, I support the recommendation that we see here about the homelessness, mental health, and addiction services. I do think that I prefer it to be programmatic than too general, because I want to be upfront with the citizens about what we're asking the money for, that we've made it very clear that we are going to invest in these kinds of programs and strategies for our community. And to questions about, if we're the city that solves homelessness, then that's another conversation, right? But it is at the 1% and not the 1.8, which I do think is judicious for us. As I've said over and over, it's a tough time to ask this question to folks, so I do like it being at 1. And I hear Mayor Pro Tem's point about using the exact number that we put in the poll, but I would lean more towards the language that we put in the poll, the things we said we wanted the money for, using that, and then keeping the full number, that 30, there and not go higher, just because I really don't want our sales tax to get too high in relationship to our other municipalities that surround us, to ensure that Englewood isn't out of step for our local businesses.
Thank you, Member Noonekamp. Member Woodward.
Yeah, I guess one of the things I have is, I was surprised when I saw in the police budget all of these other things, and I was wondering, I think as you were, Councilmember Russell, that what happened? Are we doing both, and how does that work out? Well, if this is what police had asked us for March 28th, and it's now in the budget for 2023, do we even need this in here? And should we just be going after the streets?
So Member Woodward, I think that was the point that City Manager, nothing has been approved in the budget. So the items are just the recommendation at this point. Obviously, as we move into August and September, when we talk about that, obviously that number may stay 6 or it may go down, but yeah, at this point, nothing has been approved in terms of additional resources for the police department. I think City Manager Lewis also stated that if we were to go to that number, they may have to draw down from our unassigned fund balance in order to meet that, so.
Right, there's not a recommendation to fund 6 positions. We couldn't afford it. We're going to be lucky to maybe get 2 in the budget.
Thank you. Actually, I'll just weigh in just because I've been weighed in. I would be fine with the recommendation as stated. I guess the only question that I had is that I don't believe that we actually had a question that actually posed both within one single line item as part of the survey, or so the results that we received 2 weeks ago that we talked about didn't really have this as an item. So we don't know for sure whether or not potential voters may be scared off by bundling up 2 items into one. So that would be my only concern in terms of moving forward with the recommendation. I understand the concern by communications. Actually, I'm kind of backtracking now because of we never really posed that question. That is my concern right now in terms of the recommendation, is that we didn't pose that question as 2 items within one question, and so that may change up the results. But Let me think on it, but Member Anderson, I'll move to you.
Thank you. Yeah, just, could we, go to the next slide so we can actually get the recommended ballot language up? As we've been having this discussion and I've read over this draft language, I really think it's pretty good. I'm pretty satisfied with it. I'm happy to see it in one question. I think that's probably better for the voter, kind of the voter fatigue situation. It's not everything I wanted. I would have liked to see the number maybe a little bit less, but I don't think there was consensus on council for that, and I'd be supportive of this language as it is. And I really like having the alternative policing. I think that's the better way to do it. So I think it's pretty good, and staff's worked hard on it. I like it personally. I would be supportive of it as is.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm strongly opposed to the combined question. I think it's very important when we're asking for a tax to accomplish specific purposes that we separate the items, because the one voter may have an opinion on roads that voter does not have on policing. And I understand that there are consequences with voter fatigue. I understand the concerns of the communications department relative to educating voters on what these questions mean, and mounting separate communications for the different questions. I may be somewhat sympathetic to those, although I'm not particularly sold on the city launching a communications campaign in regards to a tax initiative, but that's a different concern. What concerns me the most is that, Tabor says that the voters get to decide whether or not they want to increase taxes. And if we're not asking the right questions, we don't get the right answer about priorities. This combination, I understand that it's done in other places and that it is legal. I still feel like it flies in the face of what Tabor is intended to do, regardless of whether it's legal or not. It makes me very uncomfortable to be combining a question and thereby collecting separate constituencies that may have different desires, and if they want to fund one thing, they have to fund the other one. That's the decision they're faced with.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Anyone want to, Member Russell?
I actually agree with Mayor Pro Tem on that you can have people that would support part of it, but not the other part, and that may demise both of them, so.
Thank you, Member Russell. Member Newnenkamp?
Yeah, this has been the hardest part for me, is the one question versus two, and I have gone back and forth, and aware of how long the ballot is. I think I brought that up when we had the charter revision conversation, is concern about how many things would be on the ballot, but I am inclined for it to be two questions at this point for some of the reasons that have already been stated. But do want to add that I do think that they could be communicated to voters by the city as one thing. I think it can be one campaign. It could be, this number and have the conversation. But I do think it's also important, not necessarily that the city's, campaigning or lobbying for this, but that we're communicating to voters what this ask is. It's very important for us to explain the ramifications of if we don't have the funding, and for us to say why we're asking for it, that we're not just swimming in cash like Scrooge McDuck or something, but really explain what happens if we don't have the funds, the layoffs that will have to be made, some of those things, so that they can make an informed decision. I think that's really important.
Thank you, Member Newnenkamp. Anyone else? Actually, I had time to think about it. I agree to keep it as separate questions, just because I don't want someone to feel that they have to vote for one thing when they don't approve of the other. So that's the main reason behind it. So I would like to have two questions for this. Anyone else? I think that's 4 at least, correct?
Yes, I think it's 5 for separate questions. And then we did have 2 that I think would prefer that we do police staffing instead of alternate policing, but I believe we have 4 that are fine with the language as written. So I think we have direction.
Okay.
This as written, but as 2 separate questions. Is what
Correct.
the resolution will say.
And if anyone disagrees with that, let me know. But I think that's the way that I understood it, Mayor Pro Tem.
Just a question alternate policing services to address homelessness, mental health, and addiction. So does that exclude additional officers from the equation there?
No, and in fact, it provides the funding needed to add additional officers. So the programs and services that we provide, which is one complete sergeant who's fully dedicated to homelessness, mental health, addiction services, and that's Reed McGrath. You have the 2 co-responders, you have the case manager. When those are funded by this and any other alternate policing, and you might notice that it includes, but it is not limited to, these items, anything that fits into that alternate policing. That could be additional cameras throughout the city that provided, kind of remote monitoring of high crime areas. That's an alternate policing method. So that is a pretty broad term that we could, spend on. But these would be, the focus areas for the funding. And what that would do is free up about $1 million that we're currently spending on alternate policing related to those items to fund additional staffing needs in other parts of the department.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm wondering if there's room for something else in there as well. Because are these services, is this $1 million right now exclusively addressing homelessness, mental health, and addiction? Or are we doing other things with that? Like you mentioned hotspots, or sort of. That's how I interpreted it. So maybe there's an opportunity there as well to sort of insert something directly related to traditional policing or law enforcement. So, I mean, my goal here is to, I don't know, for lack of a better word, restore order. There's a sense that we have some disordered areas in the city and we're having difficulty addressing them. And the message I want to send to the voters is this is how we address those. So in as much as you're a voter who might not care about homelessness, mental health, or addiction, or might not understand the consequences of those things in the same way that other people do, I think it would be beneficial to have a way to tell them this also is helping in a more traditional way as well.
I think that's a good point. I think I've heard from 4 council members that they like this, want to keep this. But if we wanted to, I think this is a question for your colleagues, not for staff. So,
yeah, is there any changes from council in terms of what we had discussed tonight in terms of the questions or making modifications to that second bullet point or second number? Yeah, I'm in favor of keeping it the way it is, but I do understand Mayor Pro Tem's concerns. And I think there is a way to also do the traditional policing based off of just freeing up some of the dollars from this. So, anything else or anyone else want to jump in? I don't see anything else. So anything else on your city manager's report?
That's all. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, everyone. So we are now down to the last item. We are now adjourned. It is now 9:07. Everyone, we'll see you guys next week. There you go.